You on out there? All right, let's get this thing moving.
You don't tell me to be quiet. You can tell me to be quiet. Marty Neikens.
What's up, buddy?
You're finally here. So.
Yeah, nice to see you come back finally with the podcast.
Yeah, we're getting there. So You were the first one back. It was either you or Ducky, and Ducky don't want to come on. I'm kidding. Ducky wants to come on.
Yeah.
But it's been, especially this week, because I was trying to get one in this week for anyone, you, whoever, just because it's been, past 2 weeks have been pretty nuts. Between I don't know how much you kept up on the lawsuit stuff and whatnot going on.
A little bit, it's above.
It's pretty wild.
The knowledge that, there's so much that goes on there that I just want to say this first. Today is my grandson's 12th birthday, so I want to wish Jamari a happy birthday today.
Yeah, of course.
So I know I'd get beat up if I didn't remember that today. But, the whole NASCAR thing, there's so much that goes on behind closed doors, that we don't know about, and what we did hear about and what we can understand as regular people or racers is, it's a money issue, and NASCAR makes a ton of money, and they weren't giving it to the teams, and the teams, the teams don't make any money. The money comes in racing, as we know.
Well, I remember when it came out a few years ago. I think it was Rick Hendrick said he's like technically Hendrick, or maybe it was Jeff Gordon said that Hendrick Motorsports technically has not been profitable in like 10 years.
Yep.
On paper, they technically have made the most successful team in the sport to date has not been profitable in 10 years.
Yep.
Like,
they're not profitable in the racing aspect of it. Mm-hmm. So where all those teams, and we all know that because we race, you use your own money, Hendrick.com, with Kyle Larson, he sponsors him, but that's a business. Hendrick.com is a business. Yeah. And so they get all their money from their sponsors. Yeah. They get 10, 15, 20 million, $100 million contracts, and that's what they run it. But the organization itself doesn't make any money.
Yeah. And even on, if you look, and people, because I remember this was some of the arguments, because I was following it pretty closely, because Jeff Gluck and them were pretty on top of keeping track of stuff, and they were talking to, their lawyers were talking to O'Donnell and them, and that's the other thing is honestly, if you ask me, the money stuff is bad when they revealed all those documents. The worst stuff is the messages and all that. Yeah. Because according to them, we're a bunch of stupid rednecks. We don't know. Yep. We don't know anything. We can't read.
Yeah. They really threw Childers under the bus there, and
you have one of the you have a guy who your sport wouldn't exist without probably not as it is today. And you're calling you can take him out behind the woodshed? It's no, it's.
Well, the sport would have existed without Childers, depending on where Earnhardt would have ended up back then.
It would have been way different, though. Right. I guarantee you, it probably would not have been. It would not have been at all the same. Right. It's like saying that who else should they? Because this is the thing I was wondering is, I was talking about this with other people, and I think everybody kind of knew they probably talk about the drivers and teams like this. Mm-hmm. Because it's corporate executives, they just jump from company to company, whatever. So we kind of know, but the fact that it was out in the open, and people oh, who else are they saying that about? So it's between that and the SRX stuff. You guys are worried about SRX, and it's that's not what SRX was. I know when it started, everyone was all, this is going to replace NASCAR. I'm it's not going to calm down. It's not going to replace NASCAR. That's not what they're trying to do. It's just supposed to be a fun series. Mm-hmm. And then the fact that not only were there random people thinking that, which is just people are going to have their opinions on whatever. Right. But you have the actual executives at NASCAR worried that SRX is going to be no, it's not going to beat you. Well, they did beat them in some ratings, I guess, because I guess some of the Xfinity races.
It was the SRX was all about star power. Mm-hmm. You bring in a hot shoe late model driver. You bring in Bubba Pollard.
Hilo Castroneves,
all these guys, and of course, the SRX brought their hometown star in to race against Tony Stortz and so on. Haley Deegan and all that.
That was the whole pitch for it. Basically, was imagine you could see a race. Imagine seeing a race with an Andretti, Castroneves, Tony Stewart, Haley Deegan, and I don't know, Bill Elliott. That sounds like you went back in time, Bill and Ted did a bunch of people together and.
The only thing I didn't like about the SRX, kind of like I don't like about the Cup now, is it's a spec car.
Yeah, but I think their spec car was a little better than the next gen, at least.
Well, yeah, but it was still a spec car, and their quote unquote, the difference was the driver. you know, in a spec car. And we all know that you don't build two things the same.
That's true.
Right. You know, and you know, they had crews out there that worked on the cars to try to make them as equal as possible and everything.
Well, like how much? Like that's what I was about to ask, because I don't know much about the SRX cars themselves. I didn't know how much adjustment they had. Like I watched what was going on, but I never knew a whole lot about the cars. So
it was a spec car, you know, and they had different people, ex-drivers and stuff like that would work on them and test them and try to get them all as equal as you can. And during their pit stops, you know, there was no tire changes. You could change air pressure. There was wedge adjustments, but that was it. You know, they really, if they had a pit stop or something like that, mandatory, however they did it, I don't remember exactly. But yeah, they're you know, they weren't changing springs, and you know, they were trying. You know, it's just
because I know everyone was like, oh, it's basically just racing late models. I'm like, it's not a late model, really.
It's a full perimeter car. Yeah, you know, it's like a late model, but I think they were coilovers. So
I think so. I don't know. I'll be honest.
I think that they were coilovers, which is unique because in our form of racing, you know, everything that we drive up to, excluding a super late model, and I'm not sure about the pro late models now, but when you drive a super late model, that's the only time you'll ever drive something like that. If you move on to Cup or ARCA or anything like that, it goes back to a conventional spring. So a super late model is way different than a conventional spring race car. And that's that's one thing that a lot of drivers back in the day, their goal was to become a super late model driver and move up to Cup, but that wasn't the stepping stone, so to speak, because once you went to ARCA, which was the next step, you're back to a conventional King spring car, and it's basically a NASCAR was, not now, but the ARCA and the Busch cars and the original Cup cars, we would call them a glorified street stock. They drove like a dump truck.
They were called, when NASCAR first started, they were literally a
stock car.
They would literally call them, there were still announcers who they would call them street stocks on track for the Busch cars in the Busch series in the 80s. You can find old clips of some of the really older announcers they still called them pure stocks when they went on track for the Cup series, because that's what they were considered.
And the Cup is going very corporate, which they wouldn't be able to survive. We wouldn't have any racing without the corporate world. I think that's going to change. And but the innovation in the technology, with the technology and everything, it's not bring the best car to the racetrack, because everybody brings the same cars. You know, and all the parts and everything are made by one manufacturer, or you know, you can't.
I think that's going to change soon. I don't see them last too much.
Yeah,
this is the thing I was saying about the lawsuit, is like it didn't even matter who settled, like whichever side won at this point, because all the information that came out, it's like NASCAR's already screwed yourselves over.
They screwed themselves over.
Who's gonna buy a ticket to the Daytona 500 next year?
Right.
Like I'm a hardcore, like even like, and the people are like, well, I don't, like, especially in short track world, like I don't care anything about NASCAR. I'm like, you should care a little bit, because the people who end up being short track fans are usually like me. I didn't start off being a short track guy. I was a huge NASCAR fan, and then I got into short track, and that's how most people get into it. So it's like that affects us too.
Right. See, you're a lot younger than I am, a lot younger than I am. When I grew up, we didn't get to see NASCAR races. They weren't live. 1979 Daytona 500 was the first, you know,
it was the
first live
full race.
Right. And so I never got into racing, and people my age, because of NASCAR, unless you lived in the Carolinas and stuff like that. You went to your local show, and that's how you got involved in it and liked it. And then in 79, and then from there on, once NASCAR just took on a whole new, it was just so new to everybody, that then that's where people like you would see a NASCAR race. But when I was your age, we didn't get to see
social media now. It's completely different. I mean, it's everyone, like even people. It's like saying the NFL. Everyone knows what the NFL is. Everyone knows what NASCAR is, even if they don't watch it. Yeah. So if NASCAR goes away, because now people are like, oh, just get rid of this point, get rid of these. I'm like, what they need to do, honestly, is just fire. First of all, you need to get rid of those executives. You can't have people running your show who clearly don't give a shit about. They don't give a shit about the drivers. They don't give a shit about the fans. They've not even don't give a shit. They have contempt for the fans. They don't even you don't even care. So if you got to get rid of those guys, and then honestly, if you made 2 or 3 rules changes, you'd get 80% of your audience back. That's what always blew my mind.
I mean, everybody's a race car driver. You can't get 5 race car drivers. You can't get 3 race car drivers in the same room to agree on something.
That is, yeah,
and,
you're not wrong.
So it's.
I had to think about that one.
Everybody's got an opinion. The cars are road race cars. They're IMSA road race cars.
I'm not even. That doesn't even bother me that much. I know people don't like that.
What I'm getting at is that there's no innovation there anymore. You know, they when they first came out with the car without the crush zones, you know, they were hurting drivers. You know, the cars are so rigid. You know, so and you know, the original NASCAR saying was, you know, win on Sunday, sell on Monday. Well, there's not one car out there that you can buy. I mean, you know.
Well, I mean, to be fair, because people always make the arguments like, that's not stock cars anymore. Like, they haven't really been stock cars since the late 80s. Like people act like that's a more recent thing. It's not. It's been like that for a while.
Late 80s into the 90s, they still ran you know, the conventional coil spring car. And you know, now they have power. You know, they've got racket and pinion, and you know, and all that stuff. You can't adjust nothing. You open up the hood on a Cup car, can't see nothing. You know, it's not. It's all electronic fuel injected. Eventually, we all knew that they were going to go away from the carburetors. You know, but
I'm not even fine. Like, I'm not one of those people who it's like, I don't want them to change it. I want them to go back to like, like, no. I understand technology is going to change, so certain things are going to change. It's my issue is less with them, you know, updating certain technology as far as when newer stuff comes out for motors, like when they stop doing carbureted. It's more just an issue with the fact that like there's a lot of times now where it's like the drivers can't innovate anymore. They can't build their own motors.
Absolutely,
like,
the drivers don't even touch the cars.
Yeah, they don't like. Well, that's a good point. It's like if you look back in the day, drivers were working on the cars alongside the crew. They don't even do that anymore.
You know, I'll give you an example. David Ruderman, when he got into Cup, you know, for Michael Waltrip and everything, you know, and this was what, in the late 90s? I don't remember exactly.
Ruderman would have been. I thought Ruderman raced for a while though, so I don't know when he started. So.
But he gets out of the car, you know, in a practice, when they had practice back then, and he goes to the crew chief, you know, car chief, and says, you know, I think we need to, you know, change a spring, change a shock, and this and that. And they're like, no. We got to talk to the engineers back in North Carolina. And no, we're not doing that. So Ruderman, being a hands-on driver like Earnhardt and all these guys grew up, Rusty Wallace and stuff like that.
You're going to drive better if you're hands-on, usually.
But they don't want you to. Everything, here's the thing. If you look back the last 10 years of their racing, NASCAR, if Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., you know, it doesn't matter who it is, if they roll off that trailer in the top 5 speed, they're going to be fast all day. If you roll off 25th, you're Keselowski, you're Tony Stewart, you roll off 25th, Joey Logano, you're going to get maybe, with all the practice that you could have for 3 days, you're going to gain 2 spots on speed chart. And that's where you're going to finish in the race, because the cars, there's no hands-on the driver. They don't make enough changes there because everything goes back to the engineer in North Carolina. No, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. So there's no hands-on, you know, by the seat of your pants, the way Kyle Busch came in, and you could make adjustments and all that.
Well, that's funny. There's actually a good example of that, which was earlier this last season during the Cook 600, because I'm a Ross Chastain fan, so of course I'm going to bring up that win. But besides the win, he even pointed out, like, his car got messed up. I think he wrecked in qualifying or whatever. And in his entire season, his cars were kind of crap. They pulled out a backup car. They started dead last and won the race in the 600. So, and he said, he's like, I need more of that. I need more of that. I'm like, that shows, like, you have this car which he was practicing and he was terrible. He didn't have good speed in practice. The second they went to a completely different car, he was it was like a rocket ship. So.
Usually the backup cars that they have are not, so to speak, for that racetrack. It's for the next race, but they have to have a backup car.
They're not usually set up properly.
You know, so what I'm getting, as to what you were saying, is that car was set up for the race after Charlotte, so to speak, as a baseline, and they didn't have time to do all the engineering from North Carolina, so they had to throw it on the track, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, it worked versus what the engineers said was supposed to work.
Exactly, which proves that point. And it's like, and also there's the other side of it of like, a lot of drivers nowadays, most of them haven't worked on their own stuff, even when they were racing local stuff. Because, I mean, I can't think of many, if you look at the Cup Series, I can't think of many guys in the series who weren't just someone who, like, they either had a family name or, you know, they had a big money sponsor behind them or something. Like, most of them weren't, you know, oh, I started racing mini stocks and I moved up to late models and then I got into the Advanced Auto Series and ARCA East. And
well, now that the drivers are starting in, you know, the legend cars, and they're moving right up to late model, you know, the Logano's of the world. Like Logano ran Pro Cup. You know, he ran late model and he ran Pro Cup at 14 years old when they were talking about Mark Martin retiring. And he said, who would you want to replace you?
Yeah, he said Joey Logano.
You know, Joey Logano. And Joey Logano was 14 years old, you know. But, you know, you have the Ross Chastains of the world that...
He's probably the best example of someone who's kind of still came up
like
one of the older...
Right.
Like, he basically came up actually, it's kind of ironic. The reason he was able to get his initial start in the Truck Series is because of Justin Marks, the guy who currently owns Trackhouse, had to vacate his Truck Series seat, and I can't remember the team owner, was out at New Smyrna.
Right.
I think he saw Ross racing and then offered him, hey, can you just you can hop in this one Truck Series race. And he finished in the top 10 in this first ever race, and then he kind of went from there. Like that, but Ross is one of those only guys, I guess, kind of host of ours in that same. I don't know much about host of ours' early career before trucks.
Right.
But I'd say Chastain's probably the best example, and maybe host of ours.
Well, it's all about money. So. Chastain is somebody that didn't have the money. He lucked into a situation. Yeah.
It's not even just luck. I mean, he won championships.
Well, yeah, no, I'm not. I don't mean lucked into it, but
you mean lucked in the fact that he was able to right place, right time. Someone came across.
Like Eric Amarola, for instance.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Eric was at he'd raced late models and everything, in this area, sprint cars and blah blah blah, and then they were at a race that Hamlin. It was a Busch race, and that Hamlin was sick or he wasn't there on time or something like that, and Eric got in the car, practiced it, qualified it, and then Hamlin comes in and gets the ride, and Eric's all,
sponsors wanted Hamlin in the car.
Right, because Hamlin brought the money. Yeah. I'll give you an example. Danica Patrick. Good or bad, everybody's got an opinion on her, okay?
Everyone's got mostly the same opinion on her.
Well, I think that she was a better race car driver than it showed on the track.
She was good in IndyCar. She actually had good talent there.
But when Junior picked her up, on his Busch team, her talent aside, or not talent aside, however you want to look at it, the reason she stayed there for the length of time she did and tore up all the cars she did or didn't do, whatever you want to call it, was the GoDaddy money.
Yeah, she had the sponsor.
That's what ran Junior Motorsports and put it where it's on the map today. When GoDaddy was done, she was done. So it's about the money. So the Ross Chastains of the world are very, very, it's not going to happen.
It doesn't happen anymore.
You've got, like Hocevar, I'm imagining he probably had a lot of money. Daniel Suarez, his dad.
I mean, he's definitely got sponsorship money behind him.
Now he does, but he didn't bring it.
Yeah, I like him because I do find it.
Oh,
funny.
I love Ross.
I find it funny how many people are complaining about him, and I love that Kyle Busch is complaining about him. He's like, this guy's coming out here. I'm like, you're doing the same stuff at his age. I was like, it blows my mind he doesn't realize that. You hear him whining about him over the radio. I'm like, dude, you're doing the same stuff.
Right.
Like.
Hocevar, I don't know if he comes from a little bit of money, how he got his ride. I'm not saying he bought his ride, but
I don't think he did. I'd have to look into it more. I don't know much about him pre-Truck Series.
Right.
I know he did a lot of dirt. There's a lot of dirt late models and stuff like that. He's still doing dirt late models.
Yeah, he was doing that right after the Bigley race. Instead of going to the Snowball, he went to a big late model.
Which that's race. That was a fun one. The Derby.
Yeah.
That was. See, I mean, look. Don't get me wrong. The rule. We're talking about Ty Majeski,
right?
For anyone who doesn't know, the rule is dumb, but he also did jump the start, so it's kind of like.
Yeah, so we were talking about this last night, and everybody's got their opinion.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna kind of stretch the opinion thought here. I'm gonna use Dale Earnhardt Sr. as an example.
All right.
So when Dale Earnhardt Sr. died, the death aside, the accident aside, I'm not downplaying any of that. It changed the sport forever, 100%. But Dale Earnhardt died because he quit doing something that he said he would never quit doing. He quit racing.
Yeah, he was blocking.
He was blocking.
Yeah.
And he said he would never do that. The day that he was going to quit racing is the day that he would quit. Well, he quit racing that day, and you know what? He paid the ultimate price in quitting. But he quit racing in order for one of those two cars to win, which they were going to do that anyway. He had no reason to block.
Yeah.
He should have been, if he would have been racing, he would have finished third, maybe fifth because of the draft coming off that last corner. Yeah. Now, fast forward to the Snowball Derby. Ty Majeski, all day long, the racetrack, the officials screwed up because all day he jumped the start.
He did
every restart, not just those last two, at every start earlier in the day, picking up power, speed, coming to the line. There's a box, 75 foot, 100 foot long. Fire in the freaking box, But Ty Majeski quit racing at the end of that race because his spotter, it's all proven, we've heard all the in-car, his spotter's talking about Nasty jumping the start. His spotter's talking about Nasty door shotting him. He's talking about this. He wasn't racing his race. He had the fastest car almost by a second, 3/4 of a second all day long. Me as a racer, and I think of a lot of things because I'm old school, but knowing the way Nasty, as he says, fires, or he's a little dirty or he's a little rough, whatever, I love both of them. I don't have anything against either one of them. I would have, if I was Majeski, to just get Nasty out of my hair, I wouldn't listen to my spotter. I'd have waited until almost all the way in the box, because knowing that Nasty is jumping. He's, you know, he finally made it to the front. He was started 32nd or something like that, you know, and was pit strategy and everything. They were running and, you know, up there, and, you know, they fell back to 5th or 8th or something and came back to 2nd. But no, Majeski, and then when you watch the last time he fired, when he jumped the second time, he turned down. When he fired, he turned down because he thought that Nasty was going to crowd him into the corner. And so, you know, he fired early. So what he say, he can sit there and give all the excuses in the world about the rule and this and that, but you got 100 foot to fire in, and you fired a foot short, you know, before that 100 foot, because you let Nasty dictate your racing. And again, going back to the whole Earnhardt thing, you quit racing. You were worried about somebody else. Earnhardt was worried about Michael and Junior, and that's what cost him, and that's what cost Ty. If Ty would have waited a foot, it didn't matter where he fired. Nasty was, you know, when he fired off, Nasty's never been a really great restarter, you know, like a Ron Hornaday or a Kyle Busch.
Yeah.
You know, and you got to know that. You know the people you're racing against. And he blew it because the spotter was all over him about worrying about Nasty and this and that, and, you know, but the officials screwed up multiple times all day during that race.
Well, honestly, they weren't. And that was kind of the point people were making, is like he was kind of jumping the start all day and they never said anything.
Right.
But also, you were making an argument, because I would want to read the actual rule, because from what I understand, it's basically you can increase your speed gradually and then fire it out. But it's like, okay, how do you dictate that? Like, at what percentage of throttle is considered?
The in-car just proved it to everybody. When they put the two in-cars side by side, you know, that you could see the RPMs picking up both cars. You know, Nasty was never side by side with him.
No.
He was always back a little bit.
He was always back, but he's also, he kind of should be at that point.
Right.
So.
He should be being smart. If that was Ron Hornaday or Kyle Busch, you'd have your nose right there and you'd be glued on their right front tire, rubbing that right front tire on your door, you know. But Nasty, that wasn't Nasty's style. He didn't do that. But when you watch the in-car, when he fires that 1 foot early, you know, they're gradually picking up speed. You can see it in the car. You can hear it, you know. And then Ty turned. He turned and fired before he got, you know, right at that when he fired.
Yeah, his whole argument, that was my weird part. Was the weird thing about it was, it's like you have this whole argument that, like, well, the rule says I can gradually increase speed. It's like, well, you didn't really gradually. So it's like, on one hand, it's like I do think we fired early. That's the fact of the matter. Like, you can't really argue against it. It's pretty obvious. There's tons of video footage of it. But the rule is really dumb, because I don't understand, how do you enforce that rule? Because at what point, like, unless you, like, is there a metric? Like, at what point does it change from gradually increasing throttle to you actually firing off? Like, what is the exact point there?
Again, in my opinion, it's a NASCAR thing.
NASCAR not even NASCAR does.
Well, no, NASCAR has telemetry on every car, so they know when you touch your gas pedal when you're sitting in the bathroom. You know, so now all these short tracks, we do the bump stops, we do, you know, we copy so much stuff from NASCAR into our racing, either it be late models, even street stocks and stuff like that. Some of the Crown Vic stuff we do, you know, and they overthought this. The bottom line, it should have been, you got to restart zone.
That's what blows my mind, is like, why have all this rule about like gradual, like just make it in the restart zone, like pretty much every other short track, and like NASCAR, like it's so much simpler. And I don't understand, like, this is what was going through my mind, is like, what's the purpose of the rule? Like, because obviously that rule was made for something every rule in the rule book happened because something happened that needed. So I'm thinking.
Well, this rule book changed because of something that happened last year with Majeski. That
because of that?
It was something, I don't remember exactly what it was, but
I mean, he got disqualified I think he just had an incorrect bolt on his right front assembly.
Well, that was at Punta Gorda, I think. When that
I thought that was at the Derby.
No, I think it was Punta Gorda and one of the Bigley races.
Oh, wait, you're right.
But no, something during the restarts last year or the year before with Majeski talked to them, and then they changed the restart with, you know, gradually picking up speed. But, you know, the thing with what I'm getting at is they don't have the technology that NASCAR does.
You don't have telemetry data.
But you're trying to do something that NASCAR's doing. Yeah. You know, like in NASCAR, you know, they maintain whatever it is, 45, 55 miles an hour. They're not looking at that. They're looking at their tack.
But that's the difference also is NASCAR, they have a specific, it's not just like you can gradually increase. They have a specific speed. You have a specific number.
Now, once the pace car pulls off, if you're the leader in the Cup and you start to gradually pick up speed a little bit, and because you know where your car fires the best, what RPM.
Yeah,
they're that much more advanced than we are. Yeah. And the guy on the outside isn't going to fall back. He's going to stay right there. Yeah. They don't play that game, so to speak, that much. Yeah. But with the technology that they have in NASCAR, they can see when you fire. If you fire a foot, 6 inches, 1 inch before that line, that box, where somebody like our local racers are trying to, look like NASCAR and come up with all these rules and stuff, but we don't have the technology. A perfect example is our transponders. NASCAR's rule is from the center line of the rear end, the transponder is mounted 18 inches back.
I've seen I've seen transponders mounted every which way.
But the point is, the NASCARs are identical. Yeah. So everybody's transponder's in the same spot. Now, they use, at Showtime, for example, we have that in the rule. Yeah. 18 inches back from on the left side, from the center of the rear end. Well, you got a metric car versus a big Monte Carlo and street stock.
It's going to be different. So.
It's not like a late model where everything is the same. Every class should have a number, a distance that they would measure. And Rick Day used to say back in the day, it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter because we have had races out there. Ricky Hall's lost a couple races, and maybe won a couple races with the same way with that.
I've seen guys who they push their transponder as much forward as they can, because there are times where that little bit. And people are like, well, most of the time the flag stand's going to see it and they're going to call it. But I'm like, not always. Usually, because if there's any dispute, they're just going to go back to whatever the transponder data is.
Right. So, there's a modified driver that would hold his transponder in his car, and then he'd qualify, and then he'd throw it in the floorboard on the second lap.
What?
Yep. Because the transponder will read through the car. It doesn't have to be on the track. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. And guys,
why in your lap at that point? Why not just?
Well, you're going to run your first lap. We'll say it's a 20-second lap. Right. All right. Now you're going down the back straightaway, coming off of turn 4, and you take this transponder and you throw it to your feet. Now you've moved it forward 2 foot, so that's going to read 2 foot earlier.
I guess
when you get there, and it's going to be
moving it forward in the car.
Right. He's moving it forward in the car. So the whole idea of the transponder being mounted in a certain spot was it's supposed to be mounted, not on a string, not on not removable and all that.
It'd be pretty easy to check.
You would think. You would think.
It's everyone. I'm yet to come across people who I've seen a couple people they'll try to throw it underneath the front bumper and stuff like that.
Well, the thing that happens now is when I raced earlier and we would qualify and and run for points and everything, there was something on the line. Yeah. If you were fast qualifier, you got $500, $200. If you won the championship back in the day when I ran mini stocks in the 80s and 90s, the mini stock champion, made almost $3,000. You'd finish 5th and make $1,500.
What was the payout of mini stock champions this year?
I think they had a class sponsor, so it was probably like $750 or something like that. Yeah. But we used to get that for 10th, 20 years ago.
There's also a lot more cars. That's the other thing. Car counts were a lot higher.
Yeah, car counts are higher, but the car counts aren't as high now because of tires. The mini stocks, like a Crown Vic, pays $200 to win. The car pays it's $4,000, $5,000 to build, from scratch. Okay. My street stock, to be competitive in this world, it's a $25,000 car, and we're racing for $300 to win, and the tires cost almost $1,000, $700, $800 for a street stock. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's an insane price. That's been kind of the breaking point with a lot of classes, just the tire costs. Same thing with the sportsmen's. I know they're having a similar issue with tire costs. And those cars are even worse because you got, half the rules, when it comes to the shock rules and stuff, is to save money and keep it more equal in that class.
The cream is always going to rise to the top. It's always been that way. Yeah. You get a fluke, like David Gillen winning a race and getting a cup ride because, he came out of nowhere. He had his own team funded and was Busch, and he won one of the Busch races. Then he ended up in a cup ride, which is great for him, But the cream, evident, is 99% of the times always going to rise to the top. And
I've always had this feeling that a majority of I have a feeling there is probably, I think there is a wealth of talent out there that is, hundreds of people across the country that are genuinely good enough to be in the Cup Series right now.
Oh, absolutely.
And they aren't there because, there's a bunch of other factors that don't matter to their actual performance in driving.
The main factor is the money. Ernie Irvan said it a long time ago. Yeah. When he was in Cup, he goes, there's 1,000 drivers. I can name 100 drivers right now.
Absolutely kick ass.
That would be better than me, but he came in at the right time, and then he had the money. And you got to be marketable. Danica Patrick, Haley Deegan, any good, pretty women, great drivers, they're going to bring some money. And then when they don't perform, and I think that in Haley Deegan's situation and in Danica's situation,
Deegan's a weird one to me because I thought she was all right. Like I thought it was like, well, she's in a slump that first truck season. I'll give it to her. And then she gets on like the dirt tracks and stuff, and she's doing a little better. I'm like, okay, it's first season, second season, it's trucks, it's whatever. And then they put her in Xfinity, and she was like.
I think that
family's very good when it comes to like dirt bikes and whatnot. Like I got buddies who are super into motocross. My girlfriend's super into motocross. Like they know that. Like I know that family because of her. I don't know much about motocross, but I've watched. I think it's her brother.
Yeah.
Like he's insane. He's unbelievable. That's where that family shines. I don't think they have. I think she grew up doing that and less of,
Well, she actually got into the racing. She was the only one that got into the actual stock car racing part of it. Yeah. But I honestly believe that the teams, the crews and the teams, hurt those drivers. Like I don't remember what race it was verbatim, but she was in a truck race and she was running up front. She was running top 5 all day. Comes in for pit stops. She comes out 25th. What did she do? Did she slide the car? Did she do something? What did the pit stop? What happened? I've seen Danica at Talladega, Daytona, at Martinsville. She'll come in running in the top 10 and she comes out 25th. And then the cameraman, the powers that be are not going to take that camera and swipe it over to her pit crew, sit down there maybe eating ice cream because they think she's a fucking joke. Like when Stephen Nasse at New Smyrna, he hires a crew, or it was a snowball, whatever it was, and they, they left the tire loose and he crashed the car and he came down. They were all paid. They were sitting down there laughing. Stephen came in there wanting to beat everybody up.
Yeah, I didn't know the context behind all that. I remember seeing it, and I did not know the context behind it.
Now, those guys were paid more money than Stephen would probably won that race for, and then they're down there laughing. Now, what they were laughing about, that never came out. That question was never asked. But in Stephen's mind, he comes down pit row with a junk $100,000 late model, and these guys are sitting down there laughing, and you're paid to change that tire. So my thing is, I'm not saying that happened with Haley Deegan and Danica Patrick and some of these other lady drivers and stuff like that, but I think that the crew, like I've seen at Talladega is a perfect example. It's a handling racetrack, but it's a lot of speed. Yeah. Haley's out there running down the straightaway with her teammate. 2 trucks built by the same team. Everything's equal. Yeah. They come up on the straightaway. They're running side by side. You're going to tell me that Haley Deegan lifted? This guy's got his foot on the floor and he's driving effing away. You're going to tell me at Talladega she's not wide open? Is her arrow not there? Are they going to say that she can't handle the arrow? Look, arrow's pushing the car to the ground.
Yeah,
it's going straight.
All it is creating downforce.
Right.
Just creating grip.
So, and what kind of grip do you need going down the straightaway? But there's a speed difference, So I don't think, the old, like in F1, they talk about, number 1 team and the number 2 team. Max goes out there and he, he's a second and a half faster, 2 seconds faster than his own teammate. You're going to tell me that guy's in F1, one of the best drivers in the world, and he's not within 2 seconds of Max?
I don't know, Max. Have you seen his eyes? He looks like a crazy person. I
can
see that
Max is a hell of a driver. I'm just using that as an example,
I think in another life he may have been a serial killer.
But like with Lewis Hamilton and Bottas,
Valerie Bottas.
Yes, yep. They were equal. They qualified first and second.
They were pretty even with each other. There's a lot. I feel like everyone's a little different. It's hard to compare it to.
Whenever none of those are true champions, and again, it's just my opinion. Whenever you have team orders to let somebody go by, let somebody pass you because you're running for the championship, then it's not a true champion. In NASCAR, we never had that. In IndyCar, we don't have that. In our American.
To be fair, in NASCAR, there was a lot of stuff like that. You had, like, in 1992, you had, I think it was Junior Johnson. He literally fielded an extra car to run 1 lap and then pull in to get an extra point. Or maybe it wasn't 92. 92.
Well, it happened a lot. Now, a lot of times.
So it's like that stuff has been happening in NASCAR for a long time. It's not exclusive to F1.
It wasn't that blatant, like Hendrick or Childers. When Earnhardt was running for championships, they'd run a 3rd car. You know, and then that car, if he needed a spot,
it gains him an extra
right.
point. Yeah, or like if their car wrecked out, then they got a backup car. They've already ran a bunch of laps on track.
Right.
They know is good.
You know,
so
but we never did it like the F1, and they talk about it. You know, is he going to let it move over? You know,
it's a weird thing with them. Like if you go to I used to do a lot of like karting league events and whatnot, and most of the guys who do karting, like the local karting leagues, they're super big into formula racing. That's their thing. And if you race with them, they're very much, they all have that same attitude, whether it's, you know, Formula or even the SCCA guys, where it's, I don't know what's a good way to describe it. I guess like it's somewhat just politeness. They view it as polite. It's like, I'm going to let you pass because I know you're faster than me. Mm-hmm. It's like they don't have that same mentality of like no, if you want the spot, you got to take it.
Right.
Their mentality is like, well, I see you're doing faster. I see you're doing better. You're better than me in the corners. I'm going to let you pass. It's like I've seen a lot of that. And
it's changed over time because you go back to the Senna days and Nigel Mansell. And
Senna's a special case.
Right. But you look at the Nigel Mansells of the days and the Schumacher. Schumacher was an arrogant asshole on the racetrack because he thought he was, you know, and at a time was the best out there. But he got a lot that he didn't have to work for, you know. And now it's even changed even that much more. I mean, you know.
My main issue with F1, I guess it's more my issue with FIA, but F1 is kind of lumped into there.
Yeah.
Is the way, like, especially after what happened with Andretti when they tried to start their own team. I don't know how much, if you kept up with this.
Oh, yeah.
When they tried to start their own team, it's like they had everything together, they were all ready, they had approval, but the FIA said they didn't see the value in adding another team to the grid. And to this day, I still think that the reason for that, and because in the past, ever since the Netflix series, they've been super banking on like getting Americans to watch F1, and it's worked. Like there's F1. Once that series started, like I remember when it came out, it's like everyone started to watch it. F1. It was the biggest, and I get it. That series was really good. I watched it. Fan fucking tastic. It was great. But my thing with it is, it seems to me that F1, they want American dollars, but they don't want American drivers.
They don't want Americans' mind and mouth.
They just don't, I don't, like, because, and then people always make, well, what about Logan Sargent? I'm like, that doesn't count. That barely counts. Logan Sargent's dad is a billionaire oil tycoon. That's not, that was because of money.
Right.
But when you have Andretti, one of the most famous names in motorsports, tries to start their own team in Formula One, someone who has a history not only in your sport, but in all of motorsports. Right. And you don't let them in because I think it's literally because they're an American team.
Absolutely, I agree.
They don't want American drivers. There are American drivers in the lower formulas. There's American drivers in Formula 3, but they never get past Formula 3 or Formula 2. And I think it's literally because they want Americans to buy and watch their sport. And that's a whole other thing too, because like if you look at their ticket prices, it's like we were looking at the Vegas prices, and it's ridiculous. Yeah. It was like $3,000 for like a normal grandstand ticket for like a Friday night practice.
Right. What was it last year at the Vegas race? What did it rained or something, and then they canceled the. They
canceled. What happened was they canceled. I know what you're talking about. They canceled FP3, one of the practices, and it was like a late practice and whatnot. And they didn't refund anyone. Instead of refunding their ticket, if you bought the practice ticket, they're like, you get a $50 merchandising voucher. I'm like, the ticket was $500. You're giving them $50. Mm-hmm. And it's like.
And then, you know, F1 doing everything they did to become relevant, so to speak, in the U.S. Then they turn around and signed it.
Is like you do all this work to make they did it. They made Americans really get back into F1, and you do all this work to do that, but then you don't put any Americans in your sport. And it's like, and I always hear the stupid. It's Logan Sargent. First of all, Logan Sargent, he was not great in a Formula 1 car. He was. I compared him to like Lance Stroll, where his dad had a lot of money, so he was able to get in. And move.
Well, then they turn around now. This race we saw is the last race we're going to see, unless you buy Apple TV.
Really? I didn't know about
2026, they sign a contract exclusively with Apple TV. So ESPN doesn't have it, so we won't see any of the races live, unless you buy Sky or Apple TV. I was just reading about it the other day. I knew it. They talked about it earlier in the year. But so they did all that to do that. You know, and then you look at their sponsors in F1, other than Red Bull, you know, and the fact
that barely even counts because they have their own team. It's like they're not even really a sponsor at that point.
Well, so. Red Bull is actually the big sponsor to that team as an owner, and they're a Ford. It's a Ford motor.
Well, technically they own it. They're not the sponsors. It is their team. Red Bull owns it. So, which it's funny because people always point that out. point out, it's like, why does, I'm like, people don't understand, Red Bull's not, they don't make, people think it's like, oh, Red Bull, they make drinks, that's their company. I'm like, that's not their company, they're a marketing company.
Right.
So they just happen to be, they just hired the best guys they could to make a good Formula One.
But you look at all the sponsors in F1, they don't react, they don't transition into the USA. I mean, okay, we all know what Louis Vuitton is, very expensive.
There's like, so they got some crypto sponsors and some other stuff, but like, it's really not, now you point out there's not that many I could think of. It is primarily
who they are because you watch it. Petronas, which was Lewis Hamilton's main sponsor. Now you don't even see that on the cars.
I mean, to be fair, they do. It's unlike a lot of other motorsports. They race worldwide. It's not just That's the thing is like F1's been massive in Europe for fucking forever.
Oh yeah,
they never slowed down over there.
Yeah.
You go over there, Lewis Hamilton's a god to those guys.
Yes.
If they're motorsports fans. But I don't know. But my main issue is just it blows my mind. They put all this you put all this time and effort into the show and getting Americans to watch Formula One and adding all these races in America. Like now you guys race at Coda, you race at Vegas, you race in Miami. Like you start all these races over here, and you want us to come watch your races, but you don't want American teams in it. You don't want American drivers in it. It's like, and there was other, like if you look at, and people was like, well, just go through the super license system. It's foolproof, which it really isn't. And their whole argument is like, well, an IndyCar championship, I guess I'll explain the super license in case there's anyone who don't know. In order to race in Formula One, there's the super license. In order to get a super license, there's a couple things, but the main thing is you need to have 40 points, and different achievements are worth a different number of points. So I think like, winning a Formula 3 race is worth 5 points. Winning a Formula 2 race is worth 10. Winning the Formula 2 championship is worth 35, and there's a whole points value. You just have to get 40, and then you're eligible to get your super license. Now, all those are within Formula racing, with the exception of one. If you win an IndyCar championship, it's basically 40 points, so you could automatically get your super license. And there have been a couple drivers who, they won an IndyCar championship, and they won it, like, I think Alex Palou tried to, which, by the way, I think he'd do fucking fantastic in F1. He tried to get into F1, and they argued that they were making arguments about how technically he didn't meet the requirements for a super license. And there was a couple other drivers who did that. A lot of IndyCar drivers, which blows my mind, because IndyCar, a lot of people use that. They used to use it as a feeder in F1 for American drivers or whoever else. It used to be like, oh, you can go to IndyCar, then you can go to F1, or you can kind of go vice versa. But
well,
now
again,
it's like,
changed. Now it's just money driven. I mean, like the F1 champion, Lando just wins a championship, and I think it was, we'll just say, $10 million or whatever. No. He doesn't get a $10 million check.
Definitely way more than $10 million.
We'll just say he doesn't get a $10 million check. What that check is, $100 million or whatever, for winning the championship. He gets that over a certain amount of years.
Right.
It's not like.
I mean, how much money? Look it up real quick, because I saw the number the other day. How much money did Lewis Hamilton make? Because I saw a post saying he made like $140 million this season, which I'm like, he didn't even. Where did he finish in points? Like, those guys. That's what blows my mind. Is
he finished fifth.
I keep seeing people like who were like, when the lawsuit stuff for NASCAR come out, they were bitching about, oh, Hamlin and Michael Jordan, they're so greedy. They want all this money. I'm like, you do realize that, like, Formula One, those guys make $150 million a year. You know how much NASCAR drivers make a year? They do not make $150 million a year. I remember a tweet from 2 years ago. Kyle Larson tweeted out saying he made more selling his merchandise at a random dirt track in one weekend than he made selling his NASCAR merch over an entire NASCAR season. He made more in one weekend at a random dirt track. That's crazy. And that goes into other things, because NASCAR sort of, I'm going to get part of this wrong probably, but they more or less bought the not the merchandise rights, but whatever company it was that makes the merchandise and sells it. They basically own that at a certain point. So, because that was the weird thing with the charter agreement, is like technically NASCAR teams were supposed to get a piece, and the way it looked on paper was they got 25% of like TV, all this stuff. NASCAR got 10, and the rest went to the tracks. But then NASCAR goes and they buy the majority stake in, is it SSI, who owns all the tracks?
Yeah.
Yes. They buy like a 58% stake in them, so they own it. So it's like that 55% split or whatever it was that was supposed to go to all the tracks that we're racing at. Now half of that's going to NASCAR. And then on top of that, there's merchandising. Like, I think that was planned. I think Jim France, the way they did it and went about doing it, I think it was literally planned so they could have as much control as much money as possible. I guarantee you, it was not a spur of the moment decision that they're going to be like, let's buy SSI, let's buy all these tracks. Right after we make this charter agreement, when they first started the charter system, because that's the thing is, I don't even think the charter system's a bad system. I just think that it's being abused. In theory, it should be great, because the idea of like, if you go into, because it's the issue with any motorsport, is like, if you're an investor and you want to get into it, it's like you get into it, you put all this money into it, when you decide to get out, it's like, who are you going to sell your stuff to? Unless there's another team coming in at the same time.
Well, the charter system worked off of fake promises. NASCAR knew what they were doing, or the powers that be. So when back in the day, you know, again, you're a lot younger than I am, but you used to have to qualify to get in a race. There was no guarantee. Never a guarantee. Not the 500. You know, the 125s are a joke now because there's only 4 guys that have an opportunity to get into the race. Everybody else is guaranteed in because of the charters. So back in the day, you had to qualify your way in. So then when somebody didn't make it in, like a Dale Earnhardt, say he crashed and qualified, they would pay, you know, Joe Blow, you know, that made the race, you know, we're going to pay you, you know, $50,000, $100,000. That guy would have never made that in that race. We're going to take your spot and we're going to put our sponsor on your car. So it was, then the sponsors started saying, wait a minute, you know, we're putting out all this money and there's no guarantee that we're going to be there that week. You know, if something happened, God forbid. So that's how the charter thing was, you know, started out and evolved, where NASCAR came into these owners and said, look, we'll guarantee you these spots, you know, that we're going to start a charter system. And
that's my thing. I don't even necessarily have an issue with that. I just, because I look at it from less of the racing perspective, more the money perspective. Because the thing, you know, racing is incredibly expensive. And when you go to get out, it's kind of hard to get your money back. The way I look at the charter,
impossible,
it's basically impossible unless you get lucky. And like when Ganassi was leaving right as Trackhouse was coming in, like that's a good example. Unless you get a situation like that, which is incredibly rare, that does not happen. It's a way for people who genuinely care and who want to put money in the sport, but they want to be able to get some of their money back. Okay, I get this charter, and then it goes up in value, and I can sell the charter and get my money back at least. You know. I always look at it from that perspective. Obviously, that's probably going to change now because the new charter agreement.
But what I was meaning is that NASCAR brought that in there with, at least on paper, you know, guaranteeing X amount of cars, you know, your sponsor if you got a charter. Well, then, so everybody in the charters were not affordable for us, but affordable for them to guarantee that money, because now you can go to Budweiser, you can go to Pepperidge Farm, or you can go to whoever.
But even in the trial, they proved that NASCAR was actively trying to like push sponsors away from certain teams.
That's been going on. I mean, we had back in the day, other than Budweiser.
Look at Bass Pro Shops. You see the CEO of Bass Pro Shops, he sent a whole letter because he was so upset about what they were saying about Richard Childress. I'm like, do you realize, like, and he almost pulled, I guarantee you, if it wasn't for, you know, if things had gone a little differently, he might have pulled out of the sport. And like, that's a big money sponsor right there. You know, and he went into detail. He's like, this is ridiculous the way you guys are talking about, you know, Richard and the whole 9 yards and yada yada. It's like, that's one of the few big money sponsors you have left. Like, I mean, we can kind of go through them. It's like, you got Bass Pro. FedEx isn't there anymore, I think. I think FedEx stopped sponsoring Hamlin. I mean,
well, they're an affiliate, but they're not.
They're an affiliate, but they're not the main sponsor. I mean, you got Napa for Elliott. They're still there. Like, and I don't even count Larson because he's just sponsored by Hendrick Cars. So it's like, that doesn't even count. So what, you got, there's only like 5 main. Like,
Budweiser's not a main sponsor anymore.
Budweiser, Busch Light, I guess they're back in it. So, but like none of the, like all those big sponsors, they're not there anymore. They're not in the sport. And
now it's all affiliate sponsors to get that one big note, you know. And that's what happens with the Busch cars, you know, like a Kyle Busch or a Ross Chastain or whatever. They'll work a sponsorship deal on the side, or somebody will come to them because they can't afford to sponsor a Cup car and put them in a Busch car.
It's like, I come back to Larson talking about selling his merch at their tracks. You know, I remember a lot of people were complaining after Bowman got into that sprint car wreck and he broke his back. Like, why are they doing these races on the side? I'm like, honestly, like, besides the fact that they just like racing and they love doing this racing, I think they literally just make money doing it, selling their merchandise. If Kyle Larson is making more money, like, I mean, I've been down at Freedom Factory and around here at a couple other tracks. I've been by Auburndale when Kyle Busch was there with his kid and all this stuff. And it's like, they sell their merchandise there and they sell out every time. I think they literally just make,
Now, I heard, I don't know how true it is, I heard that Kyle Busch got paid $20,000 or $30,000 to run the Snowball.
Did he?
That's what I heard. Now, I don't know.
I mean, he could use the money right now. Him and his wife got that whole.
Yeah.
That's a weird one.
Yeah.
That whole. It's funny. I started looking at that and like how much money they got scammed out of by that. Is like I can't remember if it was life insurance or what it was, but it was.
Yeah.
That's a weird one. That's like what happened with DC Solar back like 10 or 15 years ago.
That's right. That's what held Kyle Larson from, and Ross Chastain of both, being in Cup earlier.
That's the other thing is now you got to look out for sponsors like that nowadays, where it's like they don't have nothing. They're snake oil salesmen.
And then the sponsors that are in the sport now versus back in the day with Budweiser and Winston and all that. There's probably not one person out there that decided to drink Budweiser because they watched a NASCAR race or smoked cigarettes. They were doing it already, the sponsors, for the long, when I was a kid.
Dude, I used to root for BJ McLeod because he's sponsored by PBB Blaster. I'm like, I go through 3 cans of that shit at the shop every day.
Right, yeah. Exactly, But the sponsors now, they don't care about the sport. When I say it's corporate, they don't care.
None of them do. They don't. They because it's a business to them. It's not a sport.
And if somebody,
the one exception is I'll say is the CEO of Bass Pro Shops. I can't remember his name. I feel bad now.
Yeah.
Like, I can tell because he actually puts a lot of effort.
Yes.
He goes to a lot of races. This is my argument with, like, Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. Like, people are bitching about Michael Jordan all of a sudden getting the sport and starting this lawsuit. I'm like, at least he actually gives a shit. He goes to a lot of the races. Yeah. He's always there. He actively actually gives a shit about sport. He didn't just buy a team.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Who else? I guess Pitbull, because he has a major ownership stake in Trackhouse.
Yeah, well, not now. He's out.
Really? I missed that one, I'll be honest.
Yep, so. Now, he may still have a small stake in it, but yeah, he backed out, which I was really disappointed because I thought he was good for it. He brought, a whole new genre to the, the sport. But he backed out. I don't know. It happened during the season, or he's not coming back next year or something like that. But
I don't know. But Jordan, I'm happy about just because I never watched. I don't watch basketball. Never have. I obviously know who Michael Jordan is. Who doesn't?
Right.
But I never watched basketball. I'll be honest. I'm gonna start watching basketball. He's made me a fan because a lot of the stuff he was saying, like, he wasn't wrong. And I saw people getting mad. They're like, Denny Hamlin, they're changing the way the sport's been for years. I'm like, first of all, it hasn't been like that for that long. Like, the charter system's been around for what, maybe 10 years?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. Like, it's not like we did shit. Believe it or not, the people who made the rules initially were kind of smart, and they kind of had a good way of doing it. So maybe we should go back to that. Like, it seems pretty clear. And I'm not one of those, like, I hate the people who are online, like my favorite is the people, I stopped watching when Dale died. Like, it all went downhill. I'm like, no, it didn't. It did not all go downhill after that.
Right.
You're over-exaggerating. If you actually watch sport, there have been fucking amazing races and amazing moments and amazing drivers in the 25 years since that happened. It's a horrible thing that happened.
Absolutely.
But I always get frustrated with people. It was never the same. It was never the same. But the idea that everything went downhill. It all sucked after that. Not everything was bad. And it's like, well, no, it wasn't. There were plenty of good races I could point out. The first race I ever watched was, well, arguably this is one of the worst races. One great moment, but was 2015 Martinsville playoff race, which the only reason people know that race because Matt Kenseth absolutely throwing Joey Logano into the wall.
Which he absolutely had every right to do.
Which he absolutely fucking deserved.
Yes. And Joey won't admit it to this day, but he effed up. It's the old saying now.
He fucked up that entire season. I'm sorry, when you can't come into a sport and act like the biggest,
right,
like the biggest jackass. Like, I've seen people come to like Showtime and whatnot. And
think they're the.
Yeah. I'm not naming names, but I've seen people do that where they come in, they think they're hot shit, and then.
The old saying, or the saying now is, we said it back then with Joey Logano and Matt Kenseth, was fuck around and find out. Well, you fucked around and you found out. Of all people, that would be like, getting Mark Martin to crash you. In order to get Matt Kenseth to crash you intentionally like that,
it's like
fucked up.
The most even-tempered.
Yep.
Like that's the same with Mark. Like, because I was a Harvick fan before he retired. I love Ross Chastain, but if you ask me like all-time favorite, it's Mark Martin. And it's like, because that guy, it was just straight speed.
Yep.
No bullshit. It's like everyone's a fan of Dale Earnhardt, and that I hate this fucking effect where it's like every race now, if you go to Citrus Showtime, wherever, everyone thinks they're Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go in the corner and just tap him. I was like, you don't have to do that. You can actually pass him clean. So this is why, and I'm gonna get some shit for this. That's why I don't race a lot at Auburndale, the Vic class. Not that I have anything against it. I actually do. I love that track. It's one of my favorite tracks to actually race on. But I find racing that class, it's a lot, and I think that's just the nature of the track being very one grooved. But it's very like everyone's running into you. I feel like the races out there recently it's incredibly rough out there every time. So
they ran a 30-lap race last night. I think it was 30, the Charity Trucker Weekend. I think they're racing again tonight, but or today during the day. But I don't know how many cautions there was or not.
Yeah.
But the Crown Vic class, I think, is a great class.
Yeah.
I have 5 cars. I have 5 different drivers. I try to put different people in it and everything.
But yeah, you're probably one of the bigger team owners in the class.
And it's not. I'm not trying to be a team owner. I'm trying to give people an opportunity. We've talked about this, that don't have, all the young guys that I have drive for me. They don't have the money. Not that I have a lot of money, but I'm giving something back that I didn't get when I started. Everything was on my own. I don't come from a racing background. I helped Dwayne Dempsey out, Bobby Newling. I grew up with the Copes and all that. So when I raced, it was out of my pocket, like it still is now. Yeah. But these kids aren't like it was when I grew up. They love the racing, and I'm given that opportunity. But where I think that the class is going to fail is tracks like Auburndale or Citrus and some other tracks that the rules were simple. It's a stock class. There's no reason on God's green earth that you should be running a 411 gear at Auburndale. There's no reason.
One thing I don't understand why that is the case over there. So,
and then they're letting them, at Citrus they let them run a computer. There's so many things that why don't do that.
I'd love to have. I don't know either of the track owners. I've never actually officially met like the track owner for Citrus or Auburndale, but I'd love to have them on because I'm serious about this. I'd love to have them on and talk to them about it because there might be a reason behind it that is unexplained. Or Yoho or whoever. I'd love to have track owners on because I always point this out is we look at it from the perspective. Well, you might be a little different because you know Yoho a lot better than I do, so. You probably have a bit more inside knowledge than I do.
Not with Yoho. You don't ever have any insight with Yoho.
But my point being is a lot of times it's a track will make a decision, an owner will make a decision, and to everybody it seems like, why the hell are you doing that? But there might be other reasons that we don't know about. So I always try to give the benefit of the doubt.
This is what happens, and I'm older, again, I'm 60 years old. Every single class that I've, that has been at Sunshine at the old Sunshine, now Showtime, DeSoto, Citrus. Once you let drivers get overly involved in making the rules, because we don't have tech men like we used to. Travis Nichols is a very good tech man. Ricky Brooks is very good. I don't know a lot of the other tech men. I've never heard of them. They're a lot younger than me. Right. But back in the day, when a tech man said something, that was it. You didn't argue. If you argued, you were suspended for 2 weeks. Yeah. Now there's no respect either way.
But do you think their drivers should have at least a little bit of input regards
the
to
problem is where does a little bit of input stop? Now we'll go with the street stocks, which at Sunshine Showtime they're called street stocks. Every other racetrack in the country is a pure stock. Okay, that's fine. We've been running the same rules. We run a crate motor and we run a built motor, and on a dyno they're roughly the same horsepower. Now you go over to Auburndale. The drivers started complaining. Now they're running 3-inch exhaust. They're running more left side weight. They're running better shocks. They're running Vortex heads. Vortex heads are 50 horsepower.
Yeah, that is a lot.
So now you put a Vortex head on it, and now so you give the crate motors a 4-barrel to be able to run, to be competitive.
So what's the line here? Because obviously you can't just I'm assuming there's a line here because there's certain things you definitely want to have just to make I always make this argument when it comes to like the Vic stuff is like when it comes to bodies, like there's a company that's working on making like a body style like this for the Vics. And the reason I want that has nothing to do with weight or track advantage. It's literally just because of ease of use.
Yeah.
That's why. It's like, would I rather have this or beating out metal? It's like, I'd rather have this.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
And so it's like that's not stock at all, obviously.
Right.
But I would like that to be the case. So it's like, what's kind of the line here and there when it comes to like where do you draw the line for you personally when it comes to this is not stock, but it's too far beyond what I want on the car? Because like Vortex heads, it seems like that's a bit much.
Well,
but
James Glover and he builds all my motors and everything. He's a hell of an engine builder. Been around a long time. And years ago, 10 years ago, we talked the heads that we're running now, that I'm running now, they quit making them in 1970. And now Dart and World Products and whatever, they've developed, they redesigned the head, and they're saying it's a replacement, but it's not. They've improved it. You're not going to make something the way it was in 1970 without improving it. Right, you're going to make it better. So 10 years ago, 15 years ago, James Glover went to, the track when it was still Frank and Bonnie, and then even when Yoho took it over, and said, look, we need to be able to run. I can go down to Chevrolet at that time and for $1,200 buy a set of Vortec heads, brand new, bolt on the car. Glover will charge you almost $3,000 to refurbish a set of 461s. And then he's not making any money on it. Making very little money on the parts and very little labor because we're racers. He's not going to, we're not overcharge. Right. He's not going to overcharge you. And it's still the same way. You can still buy a set of Vortec heads that bolt on that are you can grind on them, you can improve them and everything like anything, but that none of the racetracks wanted to do it. Now their excuse is the people at Auburndale, because the racers got involved and saying, oh, we need to go to Vortec head because we can. Well, they had the same excuse or the argument that I had 15 years ago, but they're not doing it. They changed it. They should have implemented it and says, okay, look, I think it is a 50-pound penalty, but they should, I think it should be more, 1 pound per horsepower.
So they basically at that point they're doing like a horsepower to weight ratio more or less
in their mind, but. If Showtime lets me bolt on a set of Vortec heads, I'll put on 50 pounds. The hell yeah. 1 pound per horsepower?
Yeah.
No, not a problem. NASCAR would eat that up all day.
But do you think, like, as far as like the Vortec heads and stuff like that, like all those adjustments, like at what point is there a point where you're like it's not a street stock anymore, or like are you fine with it? Like, because I know the main concern is money,
other than the Vortec head.
So.
The rules have been the same for 20 years. Why change it?
Well, I mean, maybe I'll play a little devil's advocate here. I mean, one of the things I brought up with Matt is eventually I think we're going to get to a point with especially the street stock class where we're going to have to switch what type of like front clip and stuff you're using because we're just going to run out of. You know what?
Let's go. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. It's a great argument. I've been doing it. Everybody's been doing it for.
I'm not saying we needed to do it now. I'm just saying I think it's
everybody's been doing the same argument for 25 years. Camaros. They quit making Camaros in 78, 79, I think.
79, I think.
Before they went to the the strut car. They said that then. That we gotta let us run this car, or they got to do this, or they got to let us manufacture a clip because you're never going to get the clips. How many Camaros are out there now?
There's still a good bit.
Citrus, they've got 15, 20 of them. Auburndale's got 10.
But I still think eventually it is going to get to that. But like, what about like, would you want to update it like body style wise? Like I understand,
I think that the chassis aren't going to be the problem. The metric cars, the big Monte Carlo stuff is definitely a lot harder because again they quit making that in 1973, 74, I think it was.
To find the Monte Carlo stuff. Because when I was looking at running street stocks at one point, I wanted to do Monte Carlo on the Camaro, and I kind of changed my mind because now we got this thing, but.
Well, the funny part about it is up until NASCAR came out with the next gen or this new car that isn't even really a car, it's nothing stock about it. The Monte Carlo front geometry on the steering is what NASCAR ran up until that point, on the big Monte Carlo.
Makes sense. So
that's what everything, all the Cup cars, Ford, Dodge, Chevrolet, everybody was designed off of that baseline of that front end geometry. And before the Camaro, the Camaro's geometry is different. The Monte Carlo geometry is way better, for racing.
The thing I always got when I started going out there, everyone always told me it was Monte Carlos, it's better handling, but kind of average speed. The Camaros, you have a lot more speed, but the handling is a lot worse. That was always what I heard from.
I mean, you can make a Camaro handle. A lot of them are cheated up. They move the left front A tower. Bottom line, I mean, they do it. But back in the day, if you move the left front A tower, the tech guy would open up the hood, look at the right front A front tower, and look at the left front and say, you're illegal, that's been moved. He didn't have to prove it. You knew. Now, my thing is, if the tech guy comes to you and says, that's illegal, you moved it or you altered that, and you want to argue it, say, okay, you're going to argue it. Now I'm going to prove to you that you did it wrong, but now you're suspended for 6 months and a $500 fine. Now, are you going to keep running your mouth, or are you just going to walk away and take But the tech guys now, there's no respect. These young kids, they don't respect the tech guys.
I remember one particular night when Travis got punched in the face by a driver over.
No, it wasn't a driver.
Incredibly stupid.
It was a driver's crew guy.
It's crew guy technically.
Yeah.
But I thought he was.
No, the kid
we know
wasn't
what we're
driving,
talking
yeah.
about. But
Yeah.
yeah, I remember that night, and I remember I talked to him. I think like a week later. I'm like, oh man, I'm sorry that happened. He's like, happens. I'm like, it shouldn't happen to you, man. You shouldn't be getting punched.
No, absolutely not.
Especially since that particular car it definitely had issues with it. From what I heard, I didn't see it firsthand, so I'm not gonna I'm not gonna say for sure. But
they DQ'd him over something. I don't remember exactly what it was, and the crew guy came over and
which
cheap
is
shot
not. No, you don't punch the fucking tech guy because he made it. I don't give a shit even if the tech guy's wrong. You don't punch the guy in the fucking, like, come on, have a little goddamn respect.
Yeah,
it blows my mind. Like,
but the respect comes in and grows growing up. When I went to Sunshine, you didn't argue with the tech guy. You didn't argue with an official because you knew you'd be suspended.
Yeah.
Now, but at
this
the
is
same
the argument I make is like, especially for like intentional wrecks on track, is like, I have never once intentionally wrecked a person ever, because it's.
I'm going to plead the fifth on that.
Huh?
I'm going to plead the fifth on that.
Hey, it's fine. I don't know. I've seen a few of your drivers. I've seen Rob. It's funny. We were going to talk about that. It's been so long at this point. Yeah. It's not even worth talking about that figure eight race with Rob. It's all good on it. I talked to Rob about it and talked to Eli's brother.
Here's the thing that I grew up racing. Again, going back, showing my age, and it really sucks. All the people that are going to watch us are going to laugh at me. But
you're only 32. Don't worry.
Yeah. That makes me really bad because my daughter's 38. So, my oldest daughter. But the way we were brought up, the old saying is you handled it that night and you were done. It didn't go from week to week to week to week.
Yeah, grab a beer with the guy.
The old saying was you handled it under racing conditions. No. If you took somebody out under caution, that's a pussy move. You're going to hurt somebody. You could kill somebody. If you run over somebody after the race, that's a pussy move. You're going to hurt somebody.
Well,
and then you go through the pits like an idiot, you're going to hurt somebody.
Well, look at like Nico Grano. Like I don't know Nico. But I saw like he right-reared somebody at Auburndale, and I don't know you, Nico, but like you got to be careful doing that stuff. Like it can be, that's how you really hurt. I've hit a wall at that angle before. Right. It's the most painful wreck I've ever been in. Was square coming out of turn 4 in showtime, and it wasn't even during the race. It was during like a practice session. And I'll admit it. Like I was being an idiot. I overcorrected a little bit, and I know how hard those right rears hurt. And it's like you got to be careful about that. I remember I saw that right rear. I don't think he even did it on purpose. I don't think he did. I know some people were like, I did it on purpose. He did this on purpose. And I'm not going to get involved. I don't know. I'm not getting involved in the Auburndale politics, really.
I didn't see. Is that the one where it was the girl?
It was, I think so.
The girl where he totaled her car or something?
Yeah, like I said, if you watch the clip, I don't think it was on purpose.
Right.
I'm not going to say for sure whether it was or not. But I was going to have him on. I don't know him at all.
Right.
But Matt brought him up, and he said like he's been doing really good at Auburndale. And I've been thinking about having him on, but I haven't gotten to talking to him yet. And then I was talking to Roger and Kendall and them at Talon's shop, and they were like, yeah, show me the clip. And I'm like, ooh, that's a rough hit.
Here's the thing that I learned, and I was young, and I was stupid, my
people need to, and I'll compare it to when I first started, and you can fucking attest, as like I'd raced maybe, 2 races, and like my second race, everyone was like, what the fuck are you doing, this and that, because I got in a wreck like coming through 1 and 2, and I think it was you, and there's a couple other people. It was actually Tommy, I think. He's like, this is the second race. Why? Like everyone has a super high standard. Like you shouldn't expect someone their second or third race to be fucking perfect. Like no, I've always said like the first time you're in the car, you're scared as shit. I'm talking about if you never raced before, ever, never been in it, don't know anything about it, you never raced before. First time you're in the car, you're really nervous, so you're taking it slow. Second time, you're a little more comfortable. Third time, you're very comfortable, and you really got down. That fourth time is when you're too comfortable.
Right.
That fourth time is when you fuck up a little bit, you overcorrect somewhere, you get in someone's right rear.
You think you're Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And I was like that, but we've all done that. I'm sure you have the exact same story I do. Everybody has that, and I hate when people, because everyone who races out there has had that moment. Like, we are not, everyone wants to think they're perfect. They race perfectly. No, you don't.
I'm not
perfect.
I'm not perfect by any means, never been, never will be, but I try to help the younger drivers, you and different people, because what I say to my drivers, and I've said it to you before, that 90% of the accidents that happen out there, they're not intentional. Guys will be mad with somebody, and all of a sudden they get together, and he ends up in the wall, and you walk around pounding your chest. Look what I did. It was an accident. You were in the right place at the right time, and were involved in an accident that you did not cause. And when I was younger, yes, I was a hothead. I had a bad reputation because I just didn't take any shit. But as I got older, when I got married, to my wife at the time, Tammy, she would put me in my spot, So I learned through her that when I got out of the car, I wasn't going over to anybody's pit. If you came over to my pit and wanted to fight, that's a whole different, but I wasn't going to go and do that. And I would turn to her and say, what happened? I don't want a crew member that is going to stick up for me no matter what I do, that I mass murder somebody. I don't want that. I want honesty. If I go out there and fuck up, I want to be told, and then I will apologize from there. But it took me a while to learn that.
Especially nowadays, everyone's got fucking GoPros in their cars.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to see, like, who did what. Everyone's got a fucking GoPro. Everyone's got cameras.
Like a perfect example of the race, I think it was down in Henry, where that guy got into the wall and got right reared by Robert Ray. Remember? Did you see that video?
I don't think I saw that.
It was a dirt track. They're coming down the straightaway, and Robert Ray's passing him, and the guy moved up on him coming down the front straightaway and hit him in the right rear. And yeah, Robert could have lifted, but why? He's not doing anything wrong. That guy ended up in the wall. Robert never actually turned him in a wall. But
sometimes it is just that's the thing is, a lot of times, people will assume it's on purpose when 95%.
What I'm getting at about is trying to figure out or growing up and learning what to do. That guy spins out, he hits the wall, goes in the pits, changes a tire, comes back out on the racetrack the wrong way, drove around the racetrack the wrong way, and then hits.
Well, that was what I told, like, that, because it's reminded me of that. We'll talk about it. When Rob, during the figure eight race, when Rob and Eli's brother were going back and forth, I feel bad. Fucking, I've had a brain fart. I've had a few beers, so I had a brain fart in his name.
Right.
Which I'm feeling bad because it's his car sitting right beside me. But that race, like, they were both, like, racing each other pretty rough. And I'd say they both were. And I know there's probably going to be some bias because it's your driver. I mean, we're not gonna lie, and I'm good with Rob. I talked to Rob about this the next day because originally I wanted to have them both on the same episode of the podcast talking about this. And they didn't want to do that, which I understand. I completely get it because it was like a week after it happened. Which I think he's still under a 6-month ban, right? Rob is, or
no? It's over.
It's over. Okay, so is he back out?
He ran in November when it was up. Yeah.
But and I told him, I'm like, hey man, nothing against you personally, but you shouldn't have done that. Like, it is very dangerous to go backwards on a figure eight track and wreck a guy. So
what he did, and I talked to him about it, was the worst case scenario is the way he handled it.
My main issue was also because literally earlier that race we had a guy who had to go to the hospital because he broke his leg so badly, who I think is still recovering from it. Cause,
Patrick, yes.
It's like Patrick literally was in a bad wreck, which was, and I know people were getting mad at him because like he blew the exit. I don't care. It's figure eight. It happens. Whatever. He broke his leg very badly, and he had to go to the hospital. And it's like, all right, we already had this wreck where he flipped, really bad wreck, broke his leg horribly, like still recovering from it. And it's been how long has it been since that race? It's like,
well, it was what, June?
It's more than 6 months. I know that.
June or July, something like that. Yeah.
So it's like that was the main part of it, and it's like you can't go backwards on track and wreck a guy. So.
Worst case scenario is the way he handled it, cutting across the racetrack.
Yes.
And he was mad. Rob was running second, and
oh no, I understood why he was upset. They were both beating on each other. Everyone was. He was beating on me first. He was beating like this isn't. It's like an elementary school when it's like he pushed me first. He shoved me first. It's like at this point, once you've gotten to this point of the I don't know what you would call it. It doesn't really matter who started it. It's I get upset and I get going out. Like I absolutely, if you go out on track, like I've had times, like I'll be honest, that one race where Austin Ramsey fucking just pushed me up a little bit. I almost just sent it in the back of him, but I was like, you know what? He did it completely fair. He moved me. That's completely fair move, and I let him fucking. I could have absolutely gone in and fucking destroyed him, but he didn't do anything wrong. He moved me, and he had me there. He was faster than me. He moved me up the track. So I let him, I could have absolutely sent it and put him in the wall because there are guys who would have done that.
Right.
Coming to the flag.
But it's, it's short track racing and everything. Right. The situation with Rob and Ryan aside, if
I felt so bad.
If Rob had spun the car around and kept on going and then waited for him, and either taken him out at the intersection or crashed him at that point.
My thing with figure eight especially is just because it's backwards across the track in figure eight. It's so fucking dangerous.
That's the worst case scenario.
All I care about, I don't give a shit about feuds and whatnot. I give a shit about people being safe, people not getting. I think it was also just the tone of that night. Like, we just had someone go to the hospital, like not even half an hour ago.
Right.
So with Patrick,
and that's funny, not funny, haha. But that night when Patrick got in the wreck, him and Justin Meyer. Justin Meyer hit him in the door. He was on the brakes. Patrick, it was a bad situation, but Senikosoff ended up flipping over. Yeah. And that's the first time that we had a Crown Vic flip over since we've started the class. And then, lo and behold, later Ryan and Rob get into it, and he gets flipped over.
Ryan took it pretty good. I talked to Ryan the next day. They wanted to call on the podcast on 9 yards, and so there was a whole thing. I originally was going to do it, and then we didn't have the camera equipment. It was a whole thing. But Ryan and Eli are good folks. Rob's good folks. I love all of them. But he actually took it in pretty good stride. His dad wasn't terribly happy, obviously. I mean, I understand that people, I fully fucking get it. If that was my kid out there and some of that, yeah, I'd be fucking pissed. Like, I absolutely get it.
But that's the biggest thing in racing now is the kids are younger now. Ryan's not young. I remember when he started and everything.
No, he's older than I am. So.
When the kid goes out there, either it's Mark Martin's kid, Matt, or, Joey Logano when he was 14 years old. When he rolls onto that racetrack, he's not a kid anymore. Because if he takes me out and he's a kid, and you're saying, well, he's only a kid, then he shouldn't be on the racetrack.
Yeah, like I said, I always try to, see, that's getting weird nowadays, because nowadays, you look at, then what would you say about, Colton Best? Colton's what?
No, what I'm getting at is that if I crash Colton, and then, his family says, oh, you're rough on him, he's a kid. Well, what happens if he crashes me? I can't get mad because he's a kid. You can't have it both ways. So in other words, what I'm saying is when you roll out on that racetrack at 13 or 14 or 15, you're still not an adult, but, we're not going to go over and beat you up. But it's if you can't handle running up front, and taking that beating and banging, which it's short track racing, then...
My thing is this, it's an interesting thing because the age of drivers in higher series has been getting lower and lower and lower. I'm going to call it the Jeff Gordon problem because he fucking started it. But the age has been getting lower and lower and lower of drivers starting in, I talked about this before, where Colton Bettis' USAC debut. He's the youngest driver since Jeff Gordon to debut in that series, which is incredibly impressive, fucking absolute achievement. But it proposed an interesting question. It's I remember how I was at 14. I wouldn't have wanted me in a race car at 14. I don't think he's 14. I think he's 15. I don't want to get that wrong.
Who, Colton?
Yeah.
I think he might be 16 now because I think he's driving.
Shit.
Yeah. Just like Rylan Mallory just turned 16 years old.
Mallory's are great. So. Oh, so yeah. I mean, but it's interesting how low the age is getting. I know there's this whole argument because it used to be. It was
Stephen Nassy.
It was a crude skill thing where, this was a skill you developed over time. There wasn't you weren't a wonder kid who moved up, and then Jeff Gordon came in and changed all that, and now everybody is you're 15 years old, 16 years old, you're in late models. So.
Well, it's unique because it's Stephen Nassy was 14 years old for 3 years.
I don't know much about. I'll be honest. I don't know much about Stephen Nassy's early stuff.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot about his ARCA stuff and whatnot because I followed a little bit.
He used to run the local trucks and stuff like that, but I think he was 14 for 3 years before he turned 14. So figure that one out. But the whole NASCAR thing with Jeff Gordon, the age thing, it became like Showtime and other tracks use excuse, whatever they want to call it, insurance.
I mean, look at we got guys who were 17 or 18 years old running in Xfinity and Cup Series.
Well, not now. We did. Now you got to be 18.
Now you got to be 18.
That's what cost Kyle Busch 2 years.
Yeah, I do think
Cup.
I do think you got to have a cutoff at a certain point.
Like when Logano, when Mark Martin, said that Logano would be his replacement, he was only 14. Logano came in and couldn't race until he was 18. Kyle Busch, Kurt was already here. Kyle Busch came in. Kurt was running in Busch at the time, and he was going to move up to Cup, but he had Greg Biffle as his teammate. And Roush said, look, you're younger than Biffle. We're going to move him up first, to give him an opportunity, and you've got a little bit more, you're still younger, so you have more time. And then with the whole Jeff Gordon thing and everything, they changed the age limit, and that cost Kyle was going to come right in and run for Hendricks, but he couldn't run for 2 years at 16 years old.
I mean, it's a weird thing where it's like now it's like, what team would hire a driver who's older? Like I guarantee there's a bunch of drivers who are a little older than, he might be like 25.
It's money. It's all about money. Why is Bubba not running in Cup? You know, Randy LaJoie's dad, or Randy LaJoie.
Well, Bubba Pollard, he's said before he doesn't really want to.
Right.
Like he's been pretty vocal. He's like I don't want to race that often. He's like, I race like twice a month, and I go home and I have plenty of time with my family.
But when he grew up racing, that's what he wanted to do. That's what we all wanted to do.
Oh, that's what I wanted to do. Yeah. And then I started doing this stuff, and I'm like, maybe I don't want to race every weekend. Yeah. I took a few months off, and I'm like, man, I got to go to a couple concerts. I got to go camping. I got to do some stuff I haven't done in 6 years, and I was like, yeah. That's been the one nice thing is I was talking to Ducky about it. Is like, it's like when I stopped, I was like, I'll stop for a little while after the season, you know, rebuild the car, rebuild the motor.
It's like when Randy LaJoie was running, Corey's dad, when he was running in back in the Busch Series and everything, you know, he ran a couple Cup races here and there and everything, won a championship and so on and so forth. And he flat out tell you in an interview that he doesn't want to run Cup. It's a whole different world. He doesn't want to put the time in.
I mean, at this point in time, like my goal initially was that when I started doing this was like one day get in the late models, like really high level late models. And then I was like, well, you know, I don't know how I feel about that, like it's the amount of money and like the traveling. It's like, I kind of just want to stick to local stuff now. It's like, I'd rather stick to Florida, maybe some tracks in Georgia and Alabama, like maybe hit up Mobile, some places like that. But I don't really want to go to Indiana and go up there and whatnot for as much. I'd go up there, you know, all the money and time and effort. It's like, I'd rather spend a lot of time and effort making me as good as I can be down here at these tracks that I love. Like I love, like especially like places like Freedom Factory. Now that Freedom Factory, like I gotta say that is the biggest track revival I've ever seen of any short track in the country.
And it's not revived. I mean, it's you know, Cletus could do that every week, but he doesn't want to. He still does his thing.
I don't blame him. I mean, I get it.
Yeah,
he's got
it's
his
a
own
headache.
thing going
Race car drivers, stock car drivers, rounding round drivers are they're a bunch of little fucking prima donna bitches. You know.
I remember I've compared it before to like high school cheerleaders.
Yeah.
Or the drama.
Yep.
It's like high school cheerleading. It's like a high school cheerleading team. So
you know, but like I mean,
Sydney's
I feel
dating
bad.
Tommy because Tommy broke up with Laura.
Right.
Like, you know, it's shit like that. So.
The snowball, you know, we can't control Mother Nature, obviously, but I feel bad for all those other teams and even the late model drivers because they raced on Tuesday. You know, they were there all that time. The Crown Vic drivers and the pure stock drivers or whatever they call them. They have weird classes compared to what we have down here. Yeah. Like my street stock, pure stock here is a sportsman there.
Yeah, they're all called different. Like if you go to the Midwest, like hobby stocks or mini stocks, like they're all called different shit depending on what.
But how do you, you know, like so we would go to the Governor's Cup, and the Governor's Cup they run the late model race 300 laps, and then we would come in, or the modifieds, for example, would come in that weekend, and we had mod minis, modifieds, trucks, and the late models, super late models. So the modified race, they charge us an ungodly fee to get in. $75 to get in the pits or something like that, right?
Yeah,
when Glover would run his modified, and they run.
Have I ever told you my rule for pit entry? This is my generalized rule.
What's that?
I think your pit entry, like whatever your race payout is, should at least cover your pit entry, whatever your start fee is.
Well, you would think that, but yeah.
That's always been my metric. Obviously, there are tracks that.
But what about all the other people? You know, so what race are you talking about? You know,
I'm not talking about. I don't know about Governor's Cup. Like
no, I'm talking about that particular night, Saturday night. Okay, it costs us $35 to get in the pits. We're running Crown Vic.
I think
now you're running a late model.
Well,
you see what I'm saying? So
late. Well, I compare it to like the lower class. I focus more on the lower classes because late model payoff and stuff that's very different from. That's a different metric. But when it comes to mini stocks, big street stocks, I think whatever you get as your starting, just the start pay, should at least just cover your track entry, the $35, whatever it's.
Well, it usually does. At Showtime, it does.
It usually does.
Citrus, it doesn't.
Citrus, it doesn't, which is why I bring that up.
Yes.
So,
you know, I don't know what Auburndale's minimum payout is.
We went to Citrus a little over a year ago.
I remember I was there.
Oh, you were there. That's right. Shit, I'm not even as old as
First place paid at what, $100, I think, and everybody made.
Yeah, and also I had to pay for my pit stall, and that was a whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't do that great that night. Something broke on my car. I don't remember. Oh, it was the shifter linkage broke. That was right. That came apart. We had to hold it together with a cotter pin off a trailer hitch.
Yeah.
But yeah, their payouts. It's like they had like it was like $20 for the winner or something, or $30. Like,
yeah,
it was
ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm not trying to make fucking a living off of this. It's
Right.
just, I think that has always been my standard for payout is as long as it covers your pit entry, anything beyond that's a bonus.
Yeah.
Whatever the $35, $40, whatever it is, as long as it covers that, I think this should be good.
You know, but they shouldn't be charging the amount of money they are for the transponders and the parking. You know, we used to pay $5 to park on a slab and $5 for the transponder. It's $10 now. And for you to get in the pits at Citrus, it costs you almost $67, just one person.
I don't know.
With the car. That's
That's
totally,
not including crew and all these other guys who are coming in.
They got a $42 pick fee, $42 or something like that. I mean, that's ridiculous. And then when they run a big show, they up the price, but the lower classes, the Crown Vics, the mini stocks or whatever, the supporting classes, we got to pay that money that the late model guys are paying, but we're not getting any more payout. And the promoters haven't figured that out.
And there's usually more of mini stocks and Crown Vics.
And it's usually a better race. I mean,
yeah, I mean that's always the argument is like they kind of.
I mean, if at the Bigley race, if Gorham didn't come from where he was, you know, and win like he did, you know, it would have been a boring race other than a true racer watching the rest of the race because there was, you know, Hayden Mallory making his first big late model race, and you know, I think he ended up one lap down.
I'm going to have Hayden on at some point. You texted me at some point. I know I never got back to you. I've been busy. I promise I will text you back. You're going to come on at some point.
But he had a phenomenal race, and he was racing, you know, with the 34. I don't remember the guy's name, and you know they had a great race. So you know, a true racer saw all the racing going on.
Oh, I watched it. I was like, this is fantastic. He's doing fantastic. I'm not gonna lie. When I first saw Hayden race, I had my doubts because like, well, this is just showtime now. He's branched out to a lot of other tracks. I'm like, all right, I see it now. Like you branch out to all these other tracks, you're kicking ass. Like,
as long as he doesn't get stepped on by a bull again, he might do all right.
I did tell him that because like I have some experience with that, and I told him I'm like, dude, that's a fucking tough road to go down, man. I go to plenty of rodeos. I've been in that world. I know people in that world. I've been in that world.
But you look, what we started talking about was the support classes, as they call us, and they treat us like, you know, the redheaded stepchild, because Yoho and Rex at Auburndale and William, they don't care about anybody.
I don't think that's the case though. I don't think it's that they don't care.
Well,
I think
here's the thing: when we would race at Sunshine or Showtime, and Rick Day was a race director at the time, and you know, you got a late model race going on there. And then as soon as a late model would turn sideways, they throw a caution. Okay. Well, you know what? They paid $40 to get in that pit. I paid $40 to get in the pits. I get taken out, spun around, and I sit on the racetrack. They finally throw a caution. They throw me off for causing a red. You have to treat everybody the same. We pay the same amount of money.
I do agree they are inconsistent when it comes to...
As the night drags on, in the lower classes,
they're inconsistent when it comes to enforcing, you know, flags, rules, whatever it is. That is true. They are inconsistent about it. You're not wrong.
And it's not just Showtime. It's a lot of the tracks on the lower classes, you know. Or, you know, they have their track favorites, whatever you want to call it, you know, and
I know that's been a contentious issue at Auburndale. It's like there's this argument going on right now about like there's some track favoritism stuff going on with Rex and all that. I don't know.
Right.
I don't
We're
know
not
Rex.
there. I don't know.
I don't know. So
you know, back in the day at Sunshine,
I only know what I've been told. So
you had a race director up top, and then you had 4 people on the racetrack in all 4 corners, and their job was to watch that corner. So if an accident happens in turn 1, the guy in turn 3 doesn't say, "Oh, you know, Jim Bob took out, you know, this person." No, because he's not watching that. He's watching his corner. But now either the racetracks don't want to pay these officials, you know, or they're, you know, you can't find an honest official, or you know, one person can't watch the whole race.
So I got a good one for you, because this is something I always thought about. Obviously, in our racing, a lot of times, if you get spun out, you get your position back. Obviously, in NASCAR and other sports, it's not like that. You don't get your position back. Do you think that should be the case for our stuff, where you don't get your position back? Because that's an interesting. That was a sigh right there.
Well, no, it's a tough spot again because you don't have enough officials watching the race.
So this comes down to the same issue you were just talking about.
You know,
like it's not enough people.
Going back to the crashing thing, is 90% of the things that happen out there, 98, 99% of them are an accident. If I roll in there and the guy 2 spots in front of you checks up and boom, 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 and I'm coming in there last, and I hit you and I turn you around, I didn't do it on purpose, but you didn't do anything wrong, but the guy up there caused all that, or he might not have caused it. He might have got loose and everybody had to check up. That's racing. That's part of it. Now, I tap out or I don't, if I don't like you, I'm not going to tap out, whatever the situation would be. But then you got to always remember what's going to goes around comes around type thing. The protecting the leader thing that the racetracks we used to have, now it's not. If you get into
leader?
if you get into the leader now at showtime, unless it's somebody that Robert wants to win, you're both going to the rear no matter what you did.
So do you really think that's the case? Because it's not like he's up in the booth.
At times, depending on the race, I've seen a race where Troy DeCare running the modified or the sprint car, he fired. His in-car camera shows him firing when the green flag drops, and they black flagged him. And I think I don't know if Sport won or.
I mean, do you think? I always like to make the distinction between genuine, like someone's actually manipulating stuff, or just someone made a mistake. Do you think that? To me, that seems like it's more of a mistake thing than just a genuine.
It's with the technology and everything that we have now, we should not make those mistakes. You have to put people in the position to make those calls. I love Robert. Robert gives us a place to race at. It's his sandbox. We play by his rules, but back off. Promote it. You're a hell of a promoter. You're a WWF promoter.
I will say, I defend Yoho on a lot of things that people don't. Mm-hmm. I will say this: my biggest recommendation would be to him is get one guy who's a step lower than you to manage stuff, and it'd probably be really helpful.
Yep.
Like if you get a guy just below you, because it takes so much weight off your shoulders. You could focus on the promotion aspect of it and getting people to come out, and you got the guy who's running the day-to-day stuff.
The thing with Robert has been, and some of the other promoters are the same way. William's in his own world. William just doesn't care.
I don't know anything about Williams, so I'm not gonna say anything.
We are the show. We're the wrestlers in the WWF.
Do you think
we're the show? If you let us, don't try to manipulate it. Don't change the rules mid-race, drivers meeting. Just we come in there. We want an organized schedule, and let's go by that schedule. And don't change it. Don't manipulate it. We're the show.
I'd love to try and get William and Yoho and Rex and these guys on, because I'd love to talk to them, because I genuinely think most of the guys who own the tracks have best interest in mind, and maybe don't execute the best all the time, but I think they genuinely want to try and make the track as good as possible. Like you don't spend all that time and money without attempting to try to make things run smooth and make things run good. So.
I agree.
I'd love to talk to him.
Robert's biggest problem is, and if he wants to be honest, he'll tell you what everybody tells him is we want a schedule. We want a structured schedule. If we're supposed to go out there and practice at 5 o'clock for 15 minutes, and you're running the late models or the modifieds or the sprints as your premier show, well, you kick us to the curb. You give us an 8-minute practice, and you let them guys practice all day. We're still paying the money to be there too. You got to, and we want a structure. We want rules. Yeah. We want rules that are black and white. It's really simple to follow.
But it's mostly just we want consistency.
Consistency. Like right now, you can go on Showtime's website. Now, I don't know about Citrus's website, and I don't know about Auburndale's or anybody else, New Smyrna or whatever, but we used to have on the website general rules. And in the general rules, they had general rules by definition. Then they had the points, how much it was, double points, what would happen with rule infractions and everything. They don't have it no more. It's not on there.
So there's no general rules?
There's no general rule. They have them written in the office somewhere, but they're not there for us to see.
So wait, there's no there's no rules based on general rules for the classes, or just
no? We have rules for the classes, but our rules always state blah 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 blah, and at the bottom refer to general rules. Right. And that becomes your safety, your fire suit, your helmet, the way the racetrack is run, fighting, fines, things like that, protest procedures. That's all in the general rules. That's not in the class rules. Yeah. Now, we used to have general rules. Then the website got hacked or it crashed, and then they never put them back up. Going back to the mini stocks deal at the end of this year at Showtime. The way the rule states, the way the general rules used to state, and they're not there now. So, I'm going verbatim because I helped write these rules. James Glover and I helped write these with Yoho back in the day. And the rule was, if you got DQ'd, now that doesn't mean black flagged on the racetrack. If you got DQ'd in tech, you lost your money and points for that night. If you got DQ'd a second time in tech, you lost your money and points for the season. Then you went back to 0. Now, those 2 nights that you got DQ'd do not go against you for the 80% rule. You were there. You got DQ'd.
Do you want to explain the 80% rule in case there's anyone listening who doesn't?
So
most people probably do, but just in case.
If most racetracks have gone to this now, which I think is a little ridiculous, is that say you run 100 races, in order for you to qualify for the points per the general rule or the championship, the money, the trophies, you have to perform, have 80% of the races. So you'd be able to lose, you could miss, 20% of the races. And because racing isn't what it was, the racetrack owners are trying to get everybody to come every week, but there's a lot of stuff going on besides racing. So they lose out on that 80% because at the end of the year at the banquet, they don't pay any money out. They don't pay any money out now. You win a championship.
I'm someone, I don't really care about payouts.
Right.
I don't care about making money. I do this because I want to be good at it,
right,
and I want to try to win. I don't care about the money personally.
It's not so much about the money because you never make money racing, without a doubt.
I've had so many people oh, you race? Oh, how much money do you make off it? I'm like, you haven't done this before, have you?
Right. But 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I ran Mod Mini, the champion was, you made $3,500. You made $900 for 10th place.
Which 25 years ago, it's not insignificant.
Right.
So
now the Mod Mini champion, unless it has a class sponsor, they pay what a feature pays. That's it. Same thing with the Crown Vic street stock. Late model guys, they run 5 races a year. They get a $5,000 or $8,000 point champion. Because they spent more money than we did, but we're there every week. So
it comes down to the argument of well, how much money would you give the Vic guys at that point for the championship?
Should be $1,000.
I think that's reasonable.
But then it shouldn't drop to 200 or 100 for second. We're looking at points. See, the way we did it back in the day, we had the GRA, Girls Racing Association. It was drivers' wives, girlfriends, whatever. And they would, when they did the Halloween things, and they would, we'd have car washes, and we'd bring cars out. We'd have little events, and they would raise money, and some of the money would go into the GRA to run the GRA, and the rest of the money would go in the drivers' points fund. We don't now. Yoho and all these other tracks, they're not taking any money from sponsors to put into the point fund. It's out of their pocket. Hose and Hydraulics sponsors classes. They're not sponsoring the class weekly, to the best of my knowledge. I don't know for sure, but they're giving, like when Dennis Cantera won the championship for street stocks, they put up $2,000 for the winner. Yoho didn't put up anything. He paid from second on back. So in my opinion, that if you didn't have that as your sponsor, and you were going to pay $500 to the champion for street stock, Hose and Hydraulics comes in, you should be paying them $2,500 because you saved $500. You shouldn't be saving $500 because at the beginning of the season, you should have your point fund already figured out.
It's kind of making up stuff along the way, it seems like, for a lot of it.
So what happened with the mini stocks at the end of the year, because of the DQ thing, Yoho changed it right there at the end, and we're going to run 3 races that night. And so anybody that does 80% rule or not, everybody that comes there that night, you had a chance to be the mini stock champion. So they run 3 races.
There's a lot of people that had a lot of DQs in the
mini
stocks. So.
Oh yeah, there wouldn't have been per the rules. Now
I will say Trevor deserves a fucking award. Yeah. And that's not like an insult or anything. That was genuinely fucking hilarious. How many DQs?
Right.
It was fucking cool, man. I know he listens to this. So
yeah, but the thing cool. with the way the rule is written. When you get DQ'd twice, you lose your season points. Now you go back to 0. Yeah. Now, if you keep coming and continue to make points and don't get DQ'd, you could still win the championship.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yeah.
Well, Valdez, I guess, got disqualified 5 times. I think Sonny got disqualified 3 times or whatever. But did they go back to 0? Does the racetrack understand they got to go back to 0 and start over again? Because as we came into the end of the season...
So you basically have this issue where it's... Following the DQ rules, everyone would be back at 0, and then reset and go back forward, but they didn't track it, I guess?
I don't know, because I wasn't involved in that. But going into that last race of that night, they said, okay, everybody's at 0, and anybody can win the championship, the best overall finisher of the 3 races. Well, then Steve Polton ran his mouth and told everybody in the world that he was going to take out Lewendecker, and lo and behold, he did it. Well, right there,
I did see that wreck. That was pretty fascinating. Yeah.
But right there, when Polton pulled into the pits, and everybody at the racetrack knew it, Yoho himself knew it. Put him on the trailer, send him home. You're threatening another driver. You know.
So there was no penalty or anything for it?
No, he didn't get. Rob Stoffel got suspended 6 months. Ryan Thompson got suspended 6 months, and Polton probably lost his money for that night. I don't know. I wouldn't have to pay out. But
had he been DQ'd before that night or no?
Polton, I don't know. Maybe in tech or something. I don't know. I'm not assuming it.
Because in that case, would it just be he loses his points and money for that night if they decided that?
No, what I'm saying is he takes out Lewendecker, who would have won the championship. Now, the big conspiracists are saying that Yoho ended up, because that happened, we're going to eliminate that 3rd race, and then the champion was going to be this person. Well, everybody's saying that he wanted Lewendecker to win the championship, and he said, Brandon, or I think his name is Brandon. Braden said that, no, I don't want to win it that way. So then Yoho decides, then Sonny was the next one in line, and then Yoho decides he's not going to have a champion for the class at all. You just totally F that up. Should have just went by your rules.
Wait, so he didn't even give a
there's no mini stock championship.
There's no mini stock championship for 2025.
Right, correct.
So that's insane.
But my thing is, you should have never done that 3-race deal. You should have went to the general rules that we can't read because you don't have them listed, and figure out how the rules went.
That's crazy that you didn't have a mini stock champion for 2025. It's you just go down the order. So from what I understand, like at that point, give either Steve or
Valdez
the championship at that point.
Right.
Like if they're the top 2 drivers, but because of DQs and you weren't tracking it, I guess.
I don't know if they tracked it or not. I'm just saying I've raced out there a long time. We usually start by average. Back in the day, nobody does that anymore because all these drivers are butthurt. They want to bitch and whine. They don't want to start in the back. It's called racing. But anyway, that's the way it should be. That way, and then have the general rules and follow them so we can follow the same.
This is going to be, by the way, it's going to be the funniest podcast. I can't wait for comments on this. It's going to be great.
And then here's another with Showtime's points. So Mark Nelson, he runs AMOD,
open wheel,
and street stock.
He's great.
Okay.
One of the best drivers I've met.
Mark is a sheriff deputy, and he works at the jail.
He's a sheriff deputy.
Yeah.
Fuck
so
Mark.
he doesn't.
You never told me that.
He doesn't. He can't come. His schedule with the way it works and everything.
I didn't know he did that, but he's told me before that.
So he won the AMOD championship per points, but he didn't complete 80% of the races.
So then technically he's not eligible then?
The general rules state in order to be eligible for any money, you have to complete more than 80% of the races.
But you can still get
80% or more. That's how it was written. Doesn't say anything else from there.
So you can't get the money, but you can still get the award technically.
So Mark should get the championship trophy, the ring.
I got to pee. So. All right, we're back. Had to take a pee break, but one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because I don't come to this with a script, but I have things in my mind I want to ask about, is when you got started in racing, because I don't know much about your early career. I know about stuff you've done over the past 10 or 20 years. I don't know anything beyond that.
So when I was a kid, I moved down here in 1970. I was 5 years old, 4 years old, and my parents, we started going to Sunshine Speedway, in the early 70s, and I grew up there. I literally every Saturday night, 40, I think it was 42 weeks a year, unless it rained, we were there as a family. I grew up there. And then when I turned 16 years old, I had a 69 Chevelle. A friend of mine was racing out there, my age, and I ran my Chevelle in the fan cars, unbeknownst to my parents, until I got out on the track that night. So that was really exciting. And then I didn't start racing until I was 18 because my parents wouldn't let me. And
you didn't start till you were 18?
Yep.
Really?
And then I bought somebody gave me a Fiat, and I ran mini stock with it for
I guess that makes sense. Those are 4-cylinders. So.
Yeah. But I didn't know anything about it. I I used to be really good friends with, still am with Bobby Newling and Dwayne Dempsey back in the day. We were all a lot younger. They're just a little older than me. And I would help them on their cars, and I built this mini stock and ran it figure 8 the first night, and Rocket Red, and he hit me in the intersection, and Ronnie Sorensen Sr., and then I got rid of the mini stock, and then I ended up buying a Camaro from James Glover's father, Big Danny Glover, and then I started running street stocks and ran that in figure 8, and ran at ran at Sunshine, and ran at Lakeland, the little Lakeland track that they used to have. This was all in the 80s, and then sold the car and built a metric car way back then in the 80s, late 80s, and it didn't do that good. The rules weren't really good for that class, and then I ended up going back to, then I built a Mod Mini, and I ran Mod Minis for 25 years.
So you've been kind of all around. You never thought about going up to late models or anything like that? You kind of stuck to the lower classes?
I practiced in a late model before, a few times. Billy Mallory let me practice. I've run a modified a couple times. I've run an open wheel 4-cylinder modified. I ran a couple seasons for a car owner, and
because one of the things that makes you interesting to me is you tend to focus on the lower classes, and you are probably, I think you're probably the biggest Crown Vic team by far. You have how many cars right now?
And I have 5 cars. We had 5 or 6 cars.
Yeah, I was about to say, I thought you had 6 because you got Austin, Mike, and...
Right. One of them caught on fire and sitting in the parking lot.
What?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
The car that Rick died in last year.
Yeah.
Had a heart attack in. He
died.
I
do want to... We can talk about that if you want, because that was...
Later on that year, in December,
right.
Last year's New Year's, I was going to run the car that night, and the day before the race, I get a phone call to rush over to the lot where we have the car stored, and the car caught on fire.
Did you figure out how?
Nope.
Like it just caught on fire?
No, we have no idea. Caught on fire, burned everything under the hood and everything, burned the seat out of it. I mean, it was terrible. And I was like,
car's cursed. Rick dies in it, and then he was
not,
technically dead. So
we're not racing that car.
Yeah,
so.
No, I don't blame you. That was one of the scariest fucking races of my life. I was in the lead when that happened.
Yeah.
And then all I remember was I remember coming through. Caution comes out, and I'm coming through 1 and 2, and I see him down in the tractor tire. I'm like, oh, somebody wrecked him, whatever.
Right.
And then they throw the red, and I'm sitting around the front stretch. But the way my seat was and everything, I could look left with the Hans and everything, but I couldn't quite enough to see. All I saw, and then I saw the ambulance come out and whatnot. So I hop out of the car at that point. Everyone else is still in their car. I'm the first one out. I hop out. I run over. Austin was right behind me, racing with me for first. So I'm like, hey, what's going on? He's like, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what's going on. Something's happening. Yeah, so you run out and everybody, and yeah, it was, and then I started talking to people along the fence line, and they were all saying like, oh, he just stopped. He got into the wall. He just kept like slowly going down the track, and like, I know you said his head was down, and then yeah, it ended up being, correct me if I'm wrong, it was a heart attack.
Yeah.
And then he was dead for several minutes because they were doing CPR on him.
Well, so when that restart happened, going down the back straightaway, Rick was behind Patrick in a 57, and Shane Grigsby was behind him. Well, an accident happened going into turn 3, and Rick ran into the back of Patrick, but I think what happened is Rick passed out. So when
everyone said his head was down and that he was out.
So when he ran into Patrick, kind of turned Patrick sideways, Rick passed out with his foot on the gas, and just there was an accident down there. So Rick went around everybody as everybody was slowing down and was passed out. Came down the front straightaway, passed out, hit turn 1 wall, bumped it, turned him down to the infield, and he hit the tractor tire. And I was watching the accident that happened at the other end of the racetrack, so I didn't see him come by. Marisha, a friend of mine, she said, hey, Marty, something's wrong with Rick. He's all slumped over. So I go running down there, and I tell Ken Smith, hey, I'm going out on the track. Rick's slumped over. Something's wrong. So I go running out there. Well, Shane had saw what was going on, Shane Grigsby, so he continued on around the track, and he was the first one to him. He jumped out of his car, jumped inside.
I remember seeing him pull up and jump out. That was, like I said, that was one of the, because here's the thing, you kind of you don't expect it, but you kind of acknowledge that people are going to get hurt in wrecks.
Right.
But if just having like a heart attack on track, like
that, massive heart attack.
That was, it was so, and I remember just like every driver was out of their cars at that point.
Yeah.
Nobody knew what was going on, but we knew what was going on. So
he was dead. He died twice. We brought him back to life twice.
Jesus.
We got him out of the car, and
so
started CPR.
He had no pulse when you guys got to him in the car? Or?
Nope.
Wow.
Yoho tried to give him CPR in the car, sitting up, and then we finally got him out of the car on the ground, and then Skid jumped in and did CPR, and then Howard Skaggs jumped in, did some CPR. Mike Coleman jumped in, did some CPR, and
So how many minutes was he technically dead?
I have no idea. We don't know. I mean, nobody at all. It seemed like it took forever. By the time the ambulance
it seemed like
got
from my
there,
perspective it took forever. Because I was standing far away. I was kind of keeping away.
Yeah.
I see y'all over there. See the ambulance coming in. I'm like, I'm gonna let them do their thing. I'm not gonna.
we were trying to shield the fans and the kids. I had went and got some white tarps and was holding them up.
Yeah.
Because I know there was a lot of kids there, and I know that a lot of people that have been out there before when Wild Bill Rivard died, that we draped off the front stands, so everybody probably thought that he was dead.
It's something some people don't like to talk about.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people. It's unfortunately it's not uncommon for people to die.
Right.
This stuff.
So they worked on them, and I learned some things. I'm not a paramedic by any means. I've when you do CPR,
you guys probably saved his life.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if it wasn't for you guys, he would not be and he's like, I haven't seen him in a few months, but last time I saw him, he seemed great. Like,
yeah, he's
good
doing
spirits,
good. He just yesterday, in fact, he had a doctor's appointment, or Monday or Friday, he had doctor's appointment, and everything, and he's doing good. But the weird thing is, when the paramedics got there, Howard was a champ. Howard Skaggs was a champ. I mean, he was pumping away, and then the paramedics didn't pull him off like you see in the movies. Okay, get out of here, we're here. They didn't do that. They set up their stuff, and then they put the line in the leg instead of, and drilled a hole in his leg and put the epi line or whatever that is in there. And
yeah, usually it's epinephrine to get the heart back started.
So then the thing that got me, that you see on TV that you don't know, or that doesn't happen on TV because it's TV, is when they put the paddles on him to shock him. They stuck the paddles on. They didn't do nothing. We're all like,
well, aren't
the paddles have to read the heart?
Yeah, they don't work unless they read it. And also, technically, if your heart stopped, they don't do anything because it's meant to shock your heart back into rhythm.
Right.
It doesn't restart. It restarts your heart. It doesn't start your heart up from scratch.
Right. So the heart has to have some kind of I don't know.
It has to have some kind of pulse.
Right. And they have to wait for it to read that.
Oh yeah.
So they shocked them two, 3 times or whatever, and and then they went back. Then at that point, every time they would stop shocking him, then the paramedics were doing the
compressions.
The compressions where Howard wasn't and all that, and
because it was I only remember it was a while. How many minutes would you say it was that y'all were down there doing that?
I couldn't even it felt like it was an hour.
It felt like to me it was an hour.
Yeah.
Like I don't remember how long it was because it literally felt like it was an hour.
In the hospital when they talked to us and everything, it might have been a couple minutes, less than 9 that his heart wasn't beating.
I mean, heart beating. I mean, I think isn't normally above like 5 minutes. Usually, you don't make it past that.
That's yeah.
That's where brain damage comes in. So.
Right. Then the brain damage. So that was the thing that they were worried about. And
that was by far the craziest.
Yes.
I didn't even want to race after that. I was shocked they let us.
Yeah. My understanding was before I left, when they put him in the ambulance, he had a pulse. His heart was beating. But he was still unconscious. And that's when they finally put him in the ambulance. And at that point, my understanding was they were going to cancel the race.
They really should have. I remember one of the things I told Austin Ramsey when I got out of the car is I was like, I don't even want. I was in the lead. Right. I was leading the race. I'd led most of the race up to that point. I told him I don't even want to keep racing at this point. They end up keep going, and we end up kept racing.
Yeah.
I think I finished second. He passed me at the last second.
Yeah. Austin ended up winning the race. Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing that a lot of people don't know is, when he got to the hospital that night, I think I left the hospital at 12:30 because there's nothing I could do, and I was back at 8 o'clock the next morning, and at 9 o'clock they were trying to wake him up. He actually woke up.
So he woke up within 12 hours of him being
But
dead.
he was very agitated and didn't know where he was and wasn't talking to anybody. He was very so then they put him back under until Monday morning. And then they worked on waking him up Monday, and he woke up, and he had conversations with people throughout that first week in the hospital. Doesn't have any recollection of it all.
Really?
Different people came to see him, Patrick and the Meyer guy, Meyer group, and just all our guys were there. Josh and Austin, and Brian Levrock stopped in, talked to him for a half an hour. He has no recollection of it.
So he doesn't remember anything from that week in the hospital after?
The only thing he remembers, the last thing he remembers, getting in the car.
Wow.
And then he went to rehab for a week and doesn't even remember the rehab. And he got out after, I think it was 5 days. And
Jesus. So that's several weeks of no memory.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It was a crazy thing, just sitting there and, because he was dead, and we're yelling at him, Rick, wake up. And, everybody that was there, there's, Howard was a champ, Skid, Mike Coleman, Shane Grigsby, Yoho, we were all, everybody was doing whatever we had to do,
Right.
and we just reacted. It wasn't say, oh, okay, you do this, you do that. It's just people reacted. They just, they just did whatever. And, we blocked off the view so the kids couldn't see it. And then I know that there were family members that they took their kids and walked them away because they knew something bad was happening. They didn't want the kids to see it and things like that. And, I was at the old Lakeland. We call it the old Lakeland, the little Lakeland, the half-mile racetrack that they didn't use back in the day when I was there, and we used to use a quarter mile. And Dennis Abney we were running figure 8 that night, and he got hit in the intersection, and he died on the track from massive internal injuries. I was there. Rick was there. We were the people that cut him out of the car, as the paramedics were working on him and everything.
Jesus.
And then, when they lifted him out of the car, they realized, that he was dead, and they handed me the IV bag and the IV, and at that point I knew, but everybody in the stands, nobody knew anything. They didn't know what was going on other than the serious injury.
There was a driver, I don't know if this was Showtime or not. I used to hear the story about, I think it was a street stock driver who got into a wreck, and he had some sort of spine injury but didn't know it, and then his son or somebody walked up and was like shaking him or grabbing him.
Yeah, that I don't know.
Someone told me about this, but it was like he had a massive spine injury, paralyzed below the neck, whole 9 yards.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been a Sunshine that I can recall. Brian, Brian Levrock, not Brian Levrock, Brian Westcott had gotten a bad accident at Showtime, hit the wall with the driver's side in a late model, and he's, he didn't die, but he had some serious injuries from that.
I've seen, it's a lot more minimized nowadays just because with like Hans devices and stuff. And like, I will say, I know there's people like, oh, I don't need a Hans, I just need a horse collar. I'm like, no. Those horse collars, I used them for 2 races. I was like, no, I can't do this. Like the Hans is yes, they're a little uncomfortable, but whatever.
Well, the younger generation like you, that's when I came up racing. We didn't. The horseshoe was there.
They didn't exist until
right. Hans didn't
really.
Until Earnhardt died. They were just coming out. F1 and everybody had them, and IndyCar had the Hans, but NASCAR had not got them, and we didn't. We weren't privy to them at the time. But when I started racing in the '80s, there was the only mandatory thing we had was a helmet, fire suit, and gloves.
And even the helmets were different because you could use open face and whatnot. Well, you can still use open face.
Well, now they're getting rid of the open face. I think Showtime actually said that they're not going to run them because somebody else.
Somebody better tell Mark.
Yeah, Mark was upset about it.
Mark's the only person I know who runs an open face helmet.
But the safety rules evolve either short track racing or somebody dying in NASCAR the same way, with things.
I mean,
now here's something that you can look up, and I know you're going to be like, there's no fucking way. So look at the rules. Go back in NASCAR and Google when NASCAR mandated the driver wear a racing fire suit.
Wear a fire suit?
Into the 90s,
I know it was
highly recommended, but not mandatory.
Really?
Yep.
So it wasn't mandatory because...
Until the late 80s or 90s. Mandatory.
I mean, it makes sense. I used to see, if you watch a lot of the old clips, they're wearing...
Well, now you're going back to the 60s, 70s and stuff like that when they wore their wingtips and all that when NASCAR started. But I'm talking about even in the 80s, with Earnhardt and Gordon and all them, all that fire suit they wore was all advertisement. It was all sponsored. They weren't mandated to wear a fire suit.
But they technically all were for the most part.
No, they all wore them because they're not stupid.
But they weren't mandated yet.
But they were not. It wasn't a rule, a safety rule. You had to wear gloves.
That's the whole thing now. I know technically, we only have to wear 1 layer for our stuff.
Well, we have an SFI rating.
Yes, I wear a 3 layer.
Right.
And then he wears a 5. So, but he races like Daytona and stuff, so it's a little different. Going 180 down Daytona is a little different than I always wear a 3 layer. And like, I don't wear the 2-piece ones or nothing like that.
I like the 1-piece. You know, it's.
I prefer it too. I know people are like, oh, they're uncomfortable. I'm like, yeah, sweaty, uncomfortable. I mean, to be fair, I'm a psycho. I wear jeans inside my fire suit, and people think I'm crazy. Yeah. So, I just don't care. The heat doesn't bother me. I used to, when I first got started, because
wait till you get older.
See, here's the thing, I'm a Florida boy, so it's like I'm a little used to the heat. But what I did to get myself used to the heat is I had remember that, I'm not sure if you remember, I used to drive that 98 SL1 Saturn, and we still have that. I would ride around in that in the middle of the afternoon with the heat up, wearing the full fire suit and helmet, driving up and down 19. I did that for like 25 to 30 minutes to get me used to the heat.
Right.
And it worked. I mean, the heat doesn't bother me anymore. I don't get.
Well, you're also working outside or in construction. So in the summer down here, no matter where you're at, it's hot.
Oh,
so I was the same way.
I know fucking, like, one of my main sponsors is a roofing company, and they wanted me to do roofing for summer. I was like, oh, roofing in Florida. That's the worst.
But the whole thing with the fire suit and wearing jeans under it is not so much the overall heat. It's the danger part of it. So if you do catch on fire, if the suit's only going to protect you for a little bit.
Yeah, that's the thing I tell people is they're like, oh, you wear a fire suit. I'm like, this is not a permanent thing. You can't, this isn't like I can go walk into a bonfire with it and stay there for an hour. That's not how it works.
Right.
It is meant to be so that you have something in between you and the fire for the 2.5 minutes it might take you to get out of the car. And that's like a really long shot is 2.5 minutes. Yeah. Usually it's a lot less than that. It should take you 30 seconds to get out of the car. Like, what's the standard for SCCA right now? 30 seconds? Yeah, it's 30 seconds. So like SCCA for the
look at, what was it, Grosjean at the F1 race when he crashed? Was it last
year? Yeah, when that was one of the worst ones. He was
unbelievable.
Completely in the fire. And even then, he still had a horrible first-degree burns because of that.
On his hands.
On his hands,
and his face because of the helmet. But the fire suit, now that fire suit is way different than what we're running.
Yeah. No, and like hand burns, like I have a scar on this hand from a hand burn in one of my arm from, I got drunken dumbness, I got thrown into a bonfire. But I can tell you, like, because after that happened, I was, trying to figure out what to do. And hand burns are the worst. Like, because there's so many, from what I understand, what happens with like really bad hand burns, and I've seen this with other drivers, you can look it up online of drivers who have bad hand burns, the skin, when it heals, it kind of contracts together. So it makes it so you can't open your hand all the way. So I've seen a lot of that. It's insane. But that's why it's like, people, I see people out there, they just take like mechanics gloves and they put them on to go race. I'm like, hey, look, man, if your arm gets burned, it sucks, but it's not a huge deal. If your hand gets burned, can't do nothing about it. It's so bad. Like, then you got surgeries and all this other shit.
And then the other thing is people talk about fire suits being so expensive and racing shoes and gloves and all that.
Would you rather spend the $1,200 or be burned?
Right.
Like, and that's what it comes down to. It's like, I wear a 3-layer. You don't technically, even a 1-layer is for the stuff we're doing. Like, if you're getting out of the car quick, if you're able to get out of the car quick, then 1-layer's fine.
But like, what happens if you're knocked out? It's a tough call. Because I mean I've seen guys with 3 layers. I think and 5 layers
people
get burned.
Kind of feel like they're invincible at this point when it comes to our
You
stuff.
don't think about. I mean it's in your mind that you could get hurt. You could be a fire or something like that. Running at tracks.
But you're not
like
thinking about it. I've told this people, like, aren't you scared of getting in a wreck? I'm like, you don't think about that. If you think about that while you're driving, you're not going to drive well.
Exactly.
So.
And then when you quit thinking about it when you're not driving,
that's when it happens.
And you're not worried, that's when you need to quit.
Man.
I
mean, the thought always comes up of like, I'm not gonna say it doesn't come up. Like every once in a while, you'll be in a weird situation where there's a 3 wide in front of you. There's a guy behind you, and you see the 2 guys all beating on you. You think, I can feel a wreck coming on here soon. But you're not really thinking about it in the chance of like, what if I get hurt? What if this happens?
What generally happens is when you do something crazy out there, and you don't realize it's crazy until you watch it on tape.
Exactly.
And you're like, man, if I had blown a right front tire, I would have been really hurt.
Yeah.
But you're reacting to the moment and everything. And
it's hindsight's 20/20. It's that whole deal.
And and we know that going in every week.
Yeah.
And you have as good a chance in Florida traffic as having a heart attack on the road
I was about to say,
you do in the racetrack.
Honestly, Florida traffic's probably more. I have literally said to many people, I feel more safe racing around Showtime than I do feel driving down 19.
When I would bring people out there, when I used to rent the cars out and let fans come in there, and I would tell them, look, you drove here today faster than you're going to go on that racetrack. And they're like, there's no way. And I said, yeah, you might run 50 mile an hour. I said, but you're going to be bolted in. You've got all this adrenaline running, how loud the car is. And when you go down the straightaway wide open, you pull on the racetrack with the banking, you feel like you're doing 200 miles an hour because you've never been 200 miles an hour. Yeah. But you're not running any faster than what you drove here.
It's also a different setting.
Yeah.
You know, you're pushing a certain type of car to its max.
Right.
Like it feels very different because it is very different from most scenarios. Most people have not been on Daytona going 180.
Yeah.
So, well, I think where are we at? Yeah, we'll wrap it up. So, I will ask this: if you want your company. If you want to give a little shout out to your company.
Neikens Pool and Spa. We build swimming pools. We do remodels, complete new rebuilds, all equipment repairs and everything. Give us a call. Look our website up. Thank you, guys.
There you go.
Peace.
Y'all have a good one.